let's go ahead and bring this council meeting to order, the council meeting of Tuesday, March 23rd. And at this time, we're going to be going into closed session in just a moment. Prior to that, we'd like to open it up for any public comment on items in closed session. That's item 1, 2, 3, or 4 in our closed session on the first page of our agenda.
Mr. Mayor, we have public comment from Ruth.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, thank you. So I'm calling mainly about item 2. I tried to find out more information about this because it was concerning to me. 48749 Main Street being Old City Hall, negotiating with the Arts and Culture Eldorado, City of Placerville, and City of Placerville. I'm a little bit stunned and surprised. I don't think I understand. When I called to ask to find out more information, the message I got through Regina, and thank you very much, Regina, for getting back to me, was basically, Mr. Driscoll says it is what it says, and no more can be stated. It is price and terms. So to me, I thought where we were was an MOU for doing the improvements to the building. I thought you were trying to get an architect to do improvements. I thought perhaps price and terms might have to do with the MOU, but not knowing I'm on the outside of this, I have to also consider it means you're selling the building. And if you're selling the building, and I might be making a fool of myself because maybe you're not, but if you are, I would think other parties should be considered to purchase the building. So if I'm speaking out of turn, I apologize. I don't really know what price and terms means in this instance. But I would think that others would be considered for purchasing the building if that's the case. The other one I know less about, or feel, item number 1, it seemed as though there was a party that had submitted their funds in good faith, and it was moving forward. I don't really know all the ins and outs of that one. I'd really love for it to go to the historical group and to the Rock and Gem people. It seemed like that was a great solution, and now you've opened it back up again. And I don't know the particulars of that, but I'd love to see it going to who it was going to be going to. So that is it. Old City Hall, very concerning to me, because I think historic people should have the option and also the consideration of it staying with the city. So I hope I'm making some sense with this, because I really don't understand the detail. Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Ruth.
Jen C., go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So it looks like, transactions associated with Old City Hall and the Immigrant Jane building that Ruth was just talking about. And I definitely, it certainly sounds like there's a real estate transaction, which means perhaps there was some fine print in the, agreement that had something about option to buy. I wasn't reading those as carefully as all of the other people that were in the other RFP, proposal. So I think it's a shame if they missed it, but I sure hope they missed something, because it does seem to be a real breach of public trust, to put those buildings up for sale, knowing how many people, have interest in those buildings and vision and, commitments that could be made. But that is a segue into the post office and the annex building, which is already, a pretty far along negotiation between community groups and the county. And so for the city to interfere with that process that, seems like it's going along well and it's a great community solution, I think is, again, a breach of public trust. I mean, here you to not nurture and support, what was a great collaboration going forward on the post office and annex building, I just think is upsetting. And clearly, if you're talking about a negotiation to take on more historical buildings, it seems like it's part of a plan to sell those as well to the Arts Council. I'm just saying that's what it looks like, because we all know that there's been a grand plan and a grand vision for all these historical buildings, but there are alternatives and there are alternative visions. So I really, really hope that you will not sell these buildings or acquire the post office and annex without, a full disclosure and opportunity for other offers to be made in good faith. So thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Leishman, go ahead.
Hello, Kathy.
Hello, I'm out walking, so I don't have anything in front of me. But I just wanted to say I thought the intention was for the city to maintain ownership of Old City Hall. And that is my desire. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy.
Sue, go ahead.
Hey Taylor, so I was just notified of this. I'm actually out of town. This is kind of a shock, actually. I have always heard the city saying that they were going to keep the building and lease it out and retain ownership of it. And seeing it now for sale to the Arts Council, somewhere we went from it's under that there's a proposal for what they would like to do to now it's the plan without ever having gone through the process. You have bypassed CEQA. This one of these buildings is under the I don't even know if you can sell it unless you deal with that, based on it being a registered under the historic National Registry. And and it's really sad that these are our historic buildings in Placerville, number 1 and 2. And we know that her plan is to basically gut out the buildings completely. And I just can't comprehend that you send out these mailers to the public that says everything's good, we're restoring the buildings, when you know very well that you're not. That the intent is to completely gut the insides, if not also the side walls, and just leave the front. And I wish you'd been more transparent, more clear, more obvious of what your plan, because I keep hearing these same things reiterated as you move to sell them to the Arts Council, to do what she wishes to at will. And I, again, would be concerned when it comes to this being registered under the National Registry, that I guess the intent is just to let that be eliminated, because once you get these buildings, they will no longer qualify. And it's up to this council to be stewards or not. And apparently you decided not to be the stewards anymore without really telling the public, because what the public relations that you're sending out isn't saying anything as to what you're actually doing. So I would, I'm seriously concerned. I know that the El Dorado County Fire District had petitioned for these buildings. They should have been number 1 on the list to acquire them if they were going to be put up for sale. They're the actually ones that donated them to the city. You know, their ancestors through change of districts, but it was the Placerville Fire Department that morphed into to the El Dorado County Fire District. And they've requested these buildings several times from this council, and they've been denied each time because you wanted to keep them. And so this is kind of a complete shock and pretty much a blast in the face to the fire district. So, and it's, again, this is one of the oldest fire stations in the state of California, if not all of the United States. And I think it's really sad when you have a lot of prominent families that have saved remnants of what was inside those buildings. I've been told that there's 2 pump engines that people wanted to restore these buildings and put those, they've saved them to go back to these buildings. And now you're moving forward with a plan that was really never vetted through the city. It was just a proposal.
Sue, we're up against our 3-minute here.
Yeah.
I know we don't
No,
have a timer
I'm
there.
done.
You can see,
I'm
but-
done. Thank
all
you.
right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
No further public comments, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you very much. Cleve.
Hey, Mayor, before we close, I need to comment on this. Number 1, there are no plans to sell those buildings. That has not been discussed by the county or by the council, excuse me, and there are no plans to sell those buildings. We are discussing other terms of our agreement with the Arts Council, and there are no plans to sell those. So I don't know how that got out that way, but I can see how maybe it could be assumed under the agenda item. But I also want to state that regarding the other 2 buildings, the DA buildings, for those that say how we got back in the fight, we were requested by the County Board of Supervisors to submit a new proposal. We did not step into the fight. We were requested by them to submit the proposal, and that's what we did. The last thing I'll say, because I don't want to go on about this, is the fact that the accusation that we have not been transparent with what we were doing with these buildings. And yet there's another proposal on the DA buildings, which no one in this town has any idea what is going to happen with those. No one knows what that proposal is that is potentially moving in that direction. We've been very transparent. We've held a minimum of 2 meetings on what we want to do with those buildings, working with the Arts Council. There's been no proposal to tell anybody what somebody else wants to do with those, and that may end up that way. So with that, I'll close.
Thank you, Cleve, for that clarification. I'm glad you did it because I might not have done it as well. All right, with that, if there's no other comments right now, we're going to go ahead and close this public meeting to go to closed session, and we will return at 6 p.m. See you then. Thank you. Let's go ahead and bring this meeting back to order. We just came out of a closed session, and so I'd like to welcome everybody to the March 23rd, 2021 City Council meeting, and let's get this started at 6:03. And if we can get a roll call, please.
I think you're muted, Regina.
Guess that space bar wasn't working. Councilmember Borelli,
Here.
Councilmember No,
Here.
Councilmember Saragosa,
Here.
Vice Mayor Taylor, Mayor Thomas.
Here, and I did pass up the Pledge of Allegiance. So let's go ahead and if you could all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. All right, thank you. Yeah, we still have everybody here. All right, so moving on, we have no ceremonial matters. And Mr. Driscoll is here to provide us with a report of closed session activity.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council did not take reportable action on any of the items on closed session. However, I also should comment that council members Jackie No and Michael Saragosa recused themselves on items 1 and 2.
And for the reason
that the council member Saragosa's has a family member who's on the board of the Arts Council, and Ms. No is involved in a project with the Arts Council.
All right, thank you very much. Just for clarity on that. All right, moving on to item number 5, if we could have a motion to adopt the agenda or any changes.
move for adoption.
Second.
All right, first and second, and if we can get a roll call, please.
Councilmember Borelli,
Aye.
Councilmember No,
Aye.
Councilmember Saragosa,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Thomas.
Aye. All right, thank you, Ms. McConnell. All right, moving on to announcements and presentations to the public. Brief comments by the City Council. I'll start at my top left, which is Patty.
Well, we've had a lot of meetings, Zoom meetings, and some in person. We chose our new members of the Parks and Rec Committee, and we had a wonderful meeting with our governance study, and I met with Cleve a couple of times, and Kara, and just, and like I say, and then other Zoom meetings, so. It's been a busy few weeks, couple of weeks.
All right, thank you, Patty. Akira.
I'm unmuted. Okay. Yeah, as Patty mentioned, it's been a busy couple of weeks. We had the governance meeting, which was great. I'd like to welcome Kelly Rogers, Stephen Vance, and Mark Sandpearl to the Recreation and Parks Committee. I look forward to seeing what they do on that. And I had an interesting meeting yesterday with Mayor Thomas, Supervisor Thomas, Cleve, Woodrow Deloria with El Dorado Transportation Commission, and Ken Payne with the El Dorado Water Agency. And it was just an interesting conversation about collaborating for future infrastructure projects, including, like potentially a big reservoir and the Highway 50 improvements on traffic. It was just kind of an introductory meeting. It was interesting. And that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember No.
My fellow council members covered it. I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. And Councilmember Saragosa.
Yeah, same. I think it was most of the same meetings as a lot of you. The only thing different is we had our first, for both Placerville and the County of El Dorado, we had our first meeting of the Pioneer CCA. So I'll give a little bit update on that when we do our reports from other committees.
All right. So I went to, I think, each one of those meetings with everybody there. I do think the Water Agency Board was very interesting, like Vice Mayor Taylor spoke of, and it was really about how much water ties to just about everything that happens, and you wouldn't think it does. And the water going on in the county is tied to agriculture. Agriculture is tied to transportation. Transportation is tied to economic development. And water leads to all things. Without water, none of those things would be happening. And so it's very interesting, the politics behind water. And we just, we did discuss a little bit about, how water can play into some of the infrastructure that we're going to be looking at, whether it's the flyover or whatever thing that comes through Placerville. And why that is important to all these other agencies. So more to come on that. It was mostly just collaboration and getting to know people. And it was actually an in-person in a big room meeting where we all sat and socially distanced, but but nonetheless, it was good to have a meeting in person. And I also attended our first meeting with Pioneer Community Energy, which was extremely fascinating. And I'm going to leave it at that and let Michael Saragosa finish that conversation. As an alternate to the board, they still swore me in, and I had a swearing in ceremony, which was interesting. So I appreciated that. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close brief comments by City Council and move on to public comments and brief non-agendized items. And this portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter of jurisdiction of the City Council. State law prohibits the City Council from acting on any item not listed on the agenda except by special action of the City Council. I reserve the right to limit the speaker's time to 3 minutes. You are not allowed to make any personal attacks on individuals or make comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual's personal privacy. I would also like to add that most people know that we have item 12.1. We are going to be talking about the recommended process for public forum for reviewing the logo, and direct the subcommittee and staff to proceed as outlined. So with that said, we're going to leave we're going to open that portion of the meeting up for public comment, anything regarding Old Hangtown and the news. So in this public comment section that we have right here, we're going to defer all comments to the news, that program, our future possible meetings and such, to item 12.1. So if you could keep these items not related to the news or the or the name Old Hangtown, and then we'll move that all to item 12.1. So thank you very much. And with that, we'll go ahead to written communication with Mr. Morse.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You have 2 items of written communication. No action recommended on those. Those are just information. Somewhat, possibly both you could consider are related to item 12.1 tonight, but those are the items you have before you in written communication. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And we'll have the clock up here in a moment. All right. And then we'll move on to item 7.2, oral communication. And we'll go ahead and turn that over to Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Public comment is open for item 7.2. These are items relating to anything that is not on the agenda. We will start with caller 857. Go ahead.
Hello. Looks like you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Oh, I was trying to ring in on item 4, the closed session report. So is this where the period where I would discuss number 4?
We opened that up to a public comment prior to going into closed session.
Okay. Anyway, so the couple items that were on closed session, looks like the city's, what's happening with, what's the city trying to do with Old City Hall? Are they trying to sell it to the Arts Council? What exactly is going on there? And the old post office by the Christmas tree, looks like the city's trying to buy that from the county, but I thought there was already a group that was going to do a museum there. So what is the city trying to do buying the old DA office? And what's the plan there? How much and what's the purpose? That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, we'll take public comment from Ruth. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, what I wanted to talk about was how much I enjoyed listening into the Planning Commission interview that you had a while back, where you had 4 candidates going for 2 positions. 2 of the people were incumbents and 2 were new people applying. And what I really liked about that process was being able to, as you did the round robin of questioning, be able to hear all 4 of them answer those 10 questions and be able to compare what their responses were. I've come to find out that when you're going to be doing your peak, the Placerville Economic Advisory Council meeting interviews, you will not be interviewing the incumbents. And I know that's your, privilege to make that choice. But I'm not certain as how a really good comparison is going to be done among the 3 incumbents and the 3 new people applying for positions for those 4 positions that are becoming available. I'm not sure if the 2 people doing interviewing have sat in on peak meetings and have been able to observe the performance of those 3 incumbents, or how will they base their comparison on those 3 incumbents with the 3 new people who are applying. So it would have been nice, I think, to have all 6 of them there to be able to do that same type of comparison as what was done for the Planning Commission, to compare the incumbents and the new applicants' responses to the questions. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Caller 368, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I just had a procedural question. I'm the author of the letter that was sent to you on March 15th, 2021 that was on your agenda as written communication item number 2. And that has nothing to do with the issues surrounding the news controversy or the name Old Hangtown. And I think it would be confusing to lump that together with what is a separate issue. So procedurally, I'd like to ask if we can comment on that now separately under item 7.1, or if you're going to reserve that for later. And if you're going to reserve it for later, then I'd like to reserve my 3 minutes till then.
I'm not sure. So you're welcome to comment on your letter as long as it's not regarding the noose or the old Hangtown.
Okay, then I can have 3 minutes to do that.
Your clock's ticking.
Okay, well, I wanted to say that I'm the author of that review, and I appreciate your putting it on the agenda so that the community was aware of it, because I prepared it for the community's benefit. You know, it was my intent to provide a factual record of a lot of who said and he said and she said and where and what and so forth that was in a lot of different places. And I wanted to give a record to the entire community for everyone's benefit to discuss it and act on it as they saw fit. And I just wanted to say in person to the council that I'm very sincere about my invitation to work with you if you have any questions or if there's any action you'd like to take based on that review. I also want to thank you for speaking out in December and January when you spoke out against the Proud Boys. And I want to reiterate that your invitation to join in your proclamation from January 26th. I think that was an excellent example and a beacon really in what has been an otherwise abyss, a dark abyss of silence by other county authorities. And, you know, to date, you know, nobody's acted to apologize to the Marine Corps Reserve, the Toys for Tots, the city of Placerville, El Dorado County, for all the negative attention that they received from all those controversial gatherings and the controversy that has still before us. So I want to thank you for your part to do something then, and I'm going to ask you to continue to use your voice in places like the Sacramento Council of Government Policy and Innovation Committee. I know that you have a member on that, as well as Supervisor Thomas. You know, if you can regionally address traffic issues, I don't see why you can't regionally address responses to Proud Boy incidents and their links to regional governments that we all have concerns about. And finally, you know, about this Proud Boy issue, it's not just a group of people, it's also a Marine Corps problem, because I know they spoke to you on December 8th and they were very insulting to you then, and that's in this review that I created. And, you know, as a veteran, because those veterans disgraced you, your meeting, and the Toys for Tots events, I've also sent this review to the Marine Corps Commandant and the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps in Washington, D.C., because they're looking at these issues too, and I've asked them to weigh in on ours. And you know, that's been addressed by the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps recently. He wrote a letter to all the Marines that said, living up to our reputation requires constant vigilance. He said, our hallmarks as Marines are discipline and spirit. We have been known for our willingness to hold leaders accountable for the malign actions of the individual. And he says it's time to do that again. And we can do that as citizens as well, not just as veterans or former military members. And I'm asking the community to weigh in on this, to you and to all the others that need to hear their concerns. And I thank you for doing that. So I thank you for your comments. And again, you know, I'd like to work in partnership with you. That's why I went to this effort and gave you this review. And if it's meaningful to you, and I hope that it is, then myself and others would like to address the issues that we still feel have been left unanswered.
All right,
so
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, go ahead.
Hey guys, my question is, I talked with Dennis about this last week, but it's with the recent lifting in COVID restrictions to red tier. My question is really for Cleve and the city council is, how is this going to affect reopening the downtown for street closures, for programs done by the PDA, with the car show guys, with Oktoberfest, Festival of Lights, Girls Night Out, the whole 9 yards. How are we going to be able to respond and to the rest of our merchants and the community to do more programs to bring, you know, the community back together? I spoke with Dennis about, you know, maybe urging for a road closure for programs specific to bringing community out together and adhering to social distancing. Because the last thing that we want to do is promote a downtown program where you've got people jam-packed on the sidewalk, with stores out on the sidewalk as well. We want stores to be able to come out, feel like they're comfortable, restaurants to expand their eating areas, but also make it feel safe on the street so that we're following the social distancing protocols. So I just wanted to check in on that. And Cleve, if you could illuminate me with how the COVID restrictions are impacting downtown events, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian.
Gen C, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. I guess just again, I did write a letter back March 6th that I still haven't had a response to. Pierre Cleve, I'm not sure who all was on there, but it had to do with street standards that are stated in the general plan and apparently come from Caltrans, and in particular, it has to do with street width for local streets versus collector streets. Anyway, the narrow lane on Clay Street is only 13 feet wide, which doesn't meet either standard. And so just confirming that and clarifying that. So I guess if you can ask for staff to respond to that, I'd really appreciate it. I will say, just on streets and transportation in general, the Placerville History Channel is having a program on Thursday, again, Thursdays always, but this is going to be Trey Pitzenberger, who has actually talked to the city council before. It's going to be about the Lincoln Highway. And of course, we do have remnants of the historic Lincoln Highway in Placerville and in El Dorado County. Of course, Main Street is a key section of that historic first transcontinental highway. And it's just really neat that we have part of the old Lincoln Highway and parts of what you see on Main Street today, you would have seen back then, when it started in 1913 all the way through when it ended in 1928, because we created numbered interstate highways like Highway 50. So anyway, again, this historic marking of that street, including some of the markers on Main Street historically, were put in place by Boy Scouts in 1928. And so Trey and various others are working on trying to sign the historic route now in California. But other than that, I just wanted to thank Cleve for his clarifications during that closed session, open comment discussion piece that we had before the closed session. And just for clarification on the post office building transactions, those have been on the County Board of Supervisors agenda. And so there has been, presentations and some discussion that has been public about the post office transactions that are underway. And Cleve, for anyone that wasn't there, clarified that the city was asked to make another offer to purchase the post office and the annex building. So we'll all just stay tuned on the outcome, but basically those historic buildings are, in the process of being sold from the county. And again, all of this is part of the historic district. We have this amazing historic district, which again, we really hope that as a city, as a community, we're going to take a hard look at that historic district map that folks proposed in 2012 and really offers an opportunity to try to tie some of this together here in Placerville. Again, gold mining period from discovery of gold in 1848 to the end of non-essential gold mining. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Call-in user 1, go ahead.
Hello, if you're calling on the phone, you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And I assume we're under open public comment, right?
That
Mr.
is
Mayor?
correct.
I got on late. I had problems here. And I can comment on either item 1 or item 2 or anything else that's under 7.1.
Yes, the only thing we're not commenting on is things that are still on the agenda to come.
Absolutely. So John Priskett, Lake Biscuit, Placerville. First, let me say that I, for one, commend the council for being very deliberate on the issue. I'm talking about item number 1 under 7.1 now. This deals with the noose and all that business.
No.
But I appreciate the council for being very deliberate on this issue, not being rash, holding
So
to your
actually,
schedule.
if you want to comment on the news and that, we actually, that is on the agenda on item 12.1.
So I'm commenting specifically on the letter. So my
Well-
comments would be focused on the letter, on item 1.
All right, go for it.
Is that all right?
Well,
I just want to.
the idea is the discussion, we want to save all that discussion for 12.1. That letter is actually related to 12.1. And on item 1 of 7.1 is related to 12.1. So, you know, it is here.
I'll
because they
defer.
asked-
I'll yield my time to the gentleman from the north, and if he wishes me to wait.
If you would do so,
What's
sir,
the-
I greatly appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, thank you so much. All right. Give it just a moment for any delays on Zoom, and we will head over to finishing up this section here. All right, we're going to go ahead and close oral communication public comment section now, and we're going to move on to consent calendar. All items listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote unless any member of the council wishes to remove any items for discussion. The reading of a full text of all resolutions will be waived unless a council member requests otherwise. Any questions or discussions regarding consent calendar? All right, if we can get a motion.
I'll move the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, we got a first and a second, and we're going to go ahead and open it up for public comment at this time.
Public comment is open for item 8, the consent calendar. If you're joining by phone, please press *9. And then when I call upon you, press *6 to unmute yourself. If anyone has any comments, now is the time to raise your hand.
I feel like I'm yelling sometimes because I'm in this room all by myself. I'm never sure if people hear me or not. It's kind of funny. All right, we see no hands coming up, so we will go ahead and close public oops, wait, just a second. We got one, we had 2, and now we're back to 1. Okay.
Ruth, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was a little bit late there because I just opened up the brief descriptions of requests for, I'm sorry, public records request. Could you just tell me, what does it mean when things are highlighted? Does that mean it's been done or it's in process? What's the difference of highlighted and non-highlighted? Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. All right, let's go ahead and close public comment now. And if you would like to respond, Ms. O'Connell, on that one.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as stated in the staff report, the 2 highlighted items just indicate that they are still either pending or open. Sometimes we're waiting on the requester to clarify their request, but it just means that they are not considered closed and fully completed.
All right, thank you. And is there any further discussion on the consent calendar? All right, seeing none, and Ms. O'Connell, if we can get a roll call, please.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Zaragoza?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Mayor Thomas?
Aye. All right, thank you very much. And now moving on to item 9, there was nothing pulled from the consent calendar. Item 10, we have no ordinances to hear. Item 11, no public hearings. So moving on to item number 12 and 12.1, approve recommended process for public forum and review city logo and review of city logo, and direct the subcommittee and staff to proceed as outlined. Mr. Morris.
you, Mayor and Council. First, I want to thank Vice Mayor Taylor and Councilmember Brelli for their assistance and what they've done, the time they put in and helping put this together. As you know, at your last meeting, we came back to the council with a recommendation of how to proceed, and that was not accepted, and we were directed to go back and move kind of in a different direction, and hopefully one that allowed for public input on this and allowed us to move forward in an organized manner. So what we have done is put together a proposal for your consideration. We did this in conjunction with a facilitator, Janice Matthews, that we were able to get in contact with, who has quite a bit of experience. As you can see, she is now retired from a full-time work, but she has a lot of experience in working with public opinion polls, and also with, she specialized in facilitating small groups of discussion on difficult topics, which I think is one that we have here. So we appreciate her input, and she assisted it, and she is also willing to assist us going forward as we look at potential facilitated meetings that are outlined in the process. So what I wanted to do was just briefly go over what we have put together, and then the committee, Vice Mayor Taylor or Councilmember Brelli can also add to that after I've finished. So we set up a goal to address the issue of perceived hate symbols on the Placerville City logo, and through public communication, education, and collaboration, develop a plan to unite the community and consider changes to the city logo. Now, I want to emphasize that doesn't say that we are going to change the logo. It says we will consider changes to the city logo. And that's what this process is designed to do, is to allow all parties, whichever side you're on regarding the logo and some of those symbols that are on there, allow all parties to weigh in and express their opinion, and then have a process to come up with how we move forward. The first step in the process that we have outlined is an education component. We have come up with basically 6 topics and potential presenters to present those topics. I believe at this point we have talked to professional historians, and then some in our community also, historians and other people with expertise in these areas that could address each of these 6 topics going forward. Our plan is to schedule these actually as a Zoom meeting, but just a presentation. It wouldn't be taking comments on them. It's just a presentation to help educate all of us in some of the history of Placerville. Each area would be given approximately 10 to 15 minutes, and we can shorten that, lengthen it, whatever you think is appropriate. But that's initially what the committee came up with. The second, assuming that we move forward with this process, the second part is to develop options. And to do that, the first step is to request, go out to the community and request that they submit pictures, statements, whatever it may be, that are examples of what Placerville means to them. So whether it be history, current day, whatever, what does Placerville mean to you, and what could be a symbol of who we are? We would collect those and narrow those down. I don't know how many we would receive, but narrow those down to the top 6 to 10. And from that, our plan would be to create a contest to create a new logo using preferably those pictures and symbols that are brought forward through that community process. We would open that up, that contest up to the public to submit those, and then we would select the top 3 of those logos. And I want to emphasize that one of those top 3 very well could be our current logo. We're not saying that that would definitely be thrown out. That would be continued to be considered through this process. And if it comes out to be one of the top 3, then moves into the process, or 3 or 4, I would say, to move into the process going forward. The next process would be a facilitated forum, and this is where I mentioned Miss Matthews had offered to help us with this, where we would have community groups and also polling to narrow down the selection of options, including the current logo, down to the top 2 or 3, which would then come back to council in the end to hold a final public meeting, and the council would select which logo they wanted to proceed with going forward based on the polling and et cetera. We haven't identified, there's a little bit of question exactly how we do that polling, but we think we can work that out. We have access to things like the Survey Monkey and things like that perhaps we can use, and other methods that we can get the information out and hopefully do some polling to find out where the community stands on these issues. So with that, we've also kind of listed some timelines on where we think these would fall and when we could do this. Those are listed in there. For example, the initial request for to go out to get things would be around in April, during the month of April. We would congregate those and put everything together for those images and bring those back in approximately May and June. And then in June, the contest for the logos. And then in July, hopefully have our final meeting when the council would make their final decision. So that is what the committee came up with and put together, hopefully a complete process to allow everyone to be able to communicate. I think it's an important, the education process is important to be considered and allow us to, not only us, our community, but everyone to be educated on the history of our community, and then hopefully move forward with a plan that the goal is to unite everyone as much as possible to move forward with what that logo could be that would represent our city going forward. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Mayor, or Vice Mayor Taylor, or Councilmember Borelli to further discuss this if they have any comments.
Thank you very much, Cleve. I caught myself, I almost started talking and not muted. Unmuted. So I'm going to turn this over to for any brief comments that Council or Vice Mayor Taylor or Councilmember Borelli would like to make.
I don't have any right at this time. I think Cleve pretty much, covered it, and it's pretty, if everybody has read the report, it pretty much states it all. So I can't think of anything we missed, but I invite, if anyone in the public thinks there's something we missed, feel free to suggest it.
Thank you, Patty. And Vice Mayor Taylor.
Well, as you might imagine, I have a lot to say about this. It might not be brief comments, but I could hold off and do it after public comment, or I could dive in now, whatever.
I think it would be great to hear what your thoughts are as you work through this.
All right, I'll kick this off. So, since this item came up last summer, I've been really concerned that this smoldering controversy could turn into a full-blown dumpster fire if given time and oxygen. And it's been my thinking that we give it oxygen every time it comes before the council and is then reported on. I've been in favor of bringing this to a conclusion expeditiously and in listening to the full range of concerns and giving ourselves a range of options in our tool belt to address those concerns. I've been alone in this thinking, and I recognize that there's a chance that I'm wrong about the dumpster fire potential here. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope that this controversy won't discourage people from getting off the highway this summer and supporting our businesses. And I hope that this won't encourage outside groups from the polar ends of the political spectrum to make our Main Street their symbolic battleground at a detriment to our community. I also respect the collective wisdom of this council, of which I am only 1 in 5, and we each tap into different perspectives and groups in the community, and that's how it should be. I recognize that collectively there has not been a political will to move quickly on this, or to consider a full range of concerns that have been raised. So how do we move forward? This proposed format is not quick, and it is very narrow in scope, only the city logo. This proposed format does not ask the council to vote on whether or not to change the existing logo without first having options that the community has brought forward and designed in a collaborative way. The nickname is not part of this format, and it's possible that the existing logo makes it to the final round for consideration. That being said, I do think that this is a really good format for bringing the community together and giving everyone a voice on this issue. I want to thank Ms. Matthews for the generosity of her time. She helped me realize that this presentation, which I was opposed to in the last meeting because I just saw it as being, you know, proponents and opponents and kind of no way to find common ground. And she helped me realize that it doesn't have to be that, it can be about a broader story of Placerville, which I'm excited about. I think this format achieves everything that the council has directed of staff in the committee: education, robust community input, and a way to document and memorialize this time and this community decision. There are a couple of things that I particularly like about this process that I want to highlight. The first is that it moves the bulk of the action outside of council meetings and into the community. The second is that there are many different ways for community members to participate: by presenting on the 7th, by submitting their ideas and what they love most about Placerville, by designing new logos for the community to consider, by participating in the focus groups and surveys, and by providing public comment to council at the July meeting, where the top logo picks would be considered. I like that this format is COVID friendly. Small focus groups could meet in person outside safely. Other focus groups could meet over Zoom. Polls and surveys can be done without people gathering inside in crowds. And I like that this format includes local artists. I think that's cool. I think this format gives the community a way to use their voice and a way to affect change in a positive and productive way, if that's their desire. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this so that we can move forward as a community.
I have to say, I truly appreciate you sharing all your thoughts and how you came to where you're at right now, because I think that's important. It helps me understand where you're coming from and how you got through this process. And so I do appreciate your thorough report on that. Would any other council members care to comment at this time? Yes.
I'm going to listen to the public first.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no others, we're going to go ahead and open this up for public comment. I look forward to hearing everybody's comment, and we're going to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to voice their thoughts on this. So, Ms. O'Connell, if you would help us out, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Public comment is now open on item 12.1. This is regarding the approval of the recommended process for the review of the city logo. We'll start with call-in user 1. Go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
All right, you there?
You should be ready to speak now. You're unmuted.
Thank you. Hello, are you there?
Yes.
Hello, call-in user 1.
He's muted.
He's muted again. Are you there? All right, let's circle back around and give him a chance on that one.
Okay, caller 525, go ahead.
Hi, this is Lyle Bennett Koshan, and I wanted to thank both the committee and the great summary that was provided by Cleve and by Vice Mayor Taylor. I've participated in this in different environments, primarily church, and I've also researched things like this. This is really exceptional. I think it's absolutely meets the criteria that you've been setting, even your proclamation about being equitable and inclusive. I'm excited by how in the very beginning, Mayor Thomas shared that he was hoping there would be an outcome that would lend itself to being in some sort of printed format. And as the Vice Mayor stated, there are so many different ways of participating and so many pieces that I think can be captured in terms of the process and where Placerville is going. So I'm just excited to watch how this plays out and thank everyone for your patience and hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leo.
Okay, Mandy Rodriguez, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. A couple of questions. I know it's not a Q&A, but these are things I'd like for you guys to consider. First of all, when you said community members, does that mean anybody? Because we've had this put out to all across the country. So that could mean, I mean, anybody can show up. So I'd like to see it be city residents only. And also, I'd like to know exactly what you mean by equitable and exactly what you mean by inclusive. I would like those defined for me because those words seem to get tossed around a lot, and I'm not sure if anyone's actually slowed down to find out what the exact definition and how we're using it in this instance is. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy.
We'll go back to call-in user 1. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
We'll try that.
All right, welcome back.
You know, damn newfangled things are so freaking difficult. Good evening, John Priskett, like Biscuit. So first, I want to thank Council Member Taylor for her comments. I really do appreciate those. Before I get to the specifics of 12.1, I'm going to jump back to 7.1 because that's what I was going to talk about earlier. But I do want to commend the council for being very deliberate on this issue, not being rash. And you've really held to your schedule. The second, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say that I really appreciate your comments that you made that I read in the paper a week or so ago. With regards to Ms. Gottberg's letter, this really struck me as fairly scattered. She compared Placerville to Auburn and Grass Valley and failed to offer any real analysis as to the relevance of this comparison. Then she goes on to compare Placerville to Folsom. Well, if you started with Auburn and Grass Valley, why didn't you keep that same train? She then speaks to changes in voter profile in Placerville, yet again fails to state as to why this might be relevant. She notes that more than 60% of the people calling in on this issue are from outside Placerville. Now, aside from being internally inconsistent with her previous point, focusing on voter change, she actually makes my point that this is a Placerville issue that needs to be decided by the citizens of Placerville. I'd say by a vote, but it sounds like we're going to do something a little bit different. Okay, which I believe she's on record as opposing any kind of vote. And skipping a bit, she compares and contrasts the various candidates around for council. Now, finally, we get an attempt at some causal relationship, but I find it woeful as it presumes that this issue, the noose, is a single issue deciding why someone voted the way they did. Doesn't appear to consider taxes, roads, the homeless, COVID, or a myriad of other issues. Well, I suppose for those who are obsessed with the issue of the noose, she might be right. In my view, this work is a classic example of the Pygmalion effect, self-fulfilling prophecy. There was a desired outcome, so the cherry-picked data clearly must support it. My guess is this is intended to provide some measure of political cover. If I were at the poker table, I wouldn't take that bet. Again, I prefer that the government decide this matter. Specifically with what we're doing now, I mean, I'd like to think I'm a measured man. I certainly want to be cooperative. I'm not entirely clear in this process. And it would seem that we're kind of already on a train that says we're going to change. And it also seems to skirt the issue entirely of the appropriateness of our noose, the Placerville noose, and Old Hangtown. And also, like the previous caller, what is community? This is really a Placerville issue. And I have to say, this isn't just about stationery or the logo. Your council can make any move. If you make any move to make change, I guarantee you there'll be continuous nonstop pressure to remove, to obliterate, to cancel anything dealing with Hangtown, public or private. And on this, I think you all know I'm right. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry I'm so not very good at this.
John, you did great. Thank you for your comments. Appreciate them.
Ruth, go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, let's see, where did I want to start? you know, Placerville is the county seat. And a lot of what Placerville does affects everyone in this county. And so whether we happen to be the 11,000 people who live within the confines of the actual definition of Placerville, or we live a bit outside, I'm not really seeing the delineation as being all that important. And especially those of us who may live outside yet have businesses inside of Placerville. So I just bring that up as I'm not so clear this is solely a Placerville. I think it's an El Dorado County issue. If we get outside of that, then yes, I would agree with the other callers. And so it's something to be considered. And if it does go to a vote, and I wouldn't come to the same conclusions that the previous caller made about that letter. I thought it was excellent. And I think, I don't think that writer is precluding an election for the Placerville residents. And that may come to pass. And one more point was, oh, I think that letter, because I also read it, had to do with demographics, and that if you look at it as possibly a partisan issue, possibly, there may be one political aspect who feels one way and the other that would lean towards the other. I'm not saying that's across the boards, but let's say if you make that presumption, then yes, the demographics of political party do make a difference. And I think that's what that writer was stating. So, and I do so appreciate Vice Mayor Taylor's comments. Thank you so very much. Very thoughtful, very thought-provoking. Thank you for letting us know your evolution of thought. This is, you know, very, very challenging. Could bring a seismic shift in our identity as a community, and not just Placervillians, all of the people in this county. And I'm glad that thorough thought is being put into this process. Thank you very much for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Ruth.
And C, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thank you. The first thing I want to bring up is symbol versus illustration. And I think that the reason it has become so emotional is because it is being treated as a symbol, you know, abstracted, an abstract symbol that's like a universal archetype. And it's not really where this imagery originated from. It originated from real events in a real place, and it's an illustration. And anyway, I just want to say that because I think it's a very important part about why it's so emotional, and there's an important distinction there. I want to really thank, my favorite part of the process is the educational piece at the beginning, because I think we don't do enough of that. I don't know when we do public education on the history, and it's such a central part of this city. And I think that's going to be a really, really important part of setting the framework for this whole thing. I am concerned about the boundaries process-wise. Clearly, we are talking about a process that is ultimately somehow quantifying, you know, a popularity contest of some kind. It's whether it's a vote, whether it's you're voting through your survey, you're voting through your, you know, images that you're putting forth. And so it really is a question. Is this a process that involves the city? Does it involve the county? Does it involve the entire country, you know, of whom, you know, this has become, you know, an issue that a lot of people are tying other issues to. So I think the boundaries are not clear in the process at all of you know, who gets to submit artwork, who gets to fill out the survey, all of that. And so in terms of identity, I agree, it's first city and secondly county. And, you know, regarding the possibility of voting, I guess, you know, really voting on a ballot, I just feel like we shouldn't rule that out entirely either. You know, and it may be that we have a ballot coming up in the near future. So, you know, but I guess unfortunately that ballot, I think, I don't know what the timing is, would be before maybe this process as described would be completed. But anyway, I love the educational part. I hope, you know, I hope that's, I hope that's enough, just one educational session. And I hope if more comes out of that, a need for more education, that we adapt the process, that we have a process we can adapt to allow for more education. Because I really think that's the critical thing here, is to not mix up symbols with history. So anyway, I think that's it for my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Brian, go ahead.
Hey, City Council, you guys, this program that you guys are putting forth, I think is really wonderful. I think it's a great way of looking at a political process and political protocol with a way of encompassing so many different facets that will bring about either decision. However it goes, I think going through this process, it really opens it up and provides clarity. The one question I do have is, how are the educators in the education layout, how are they chosen? Would there be like an application? Because there are a plethora of individuals, around Placerville, Main Street, even from Georgetown, the history museums, that would be really great presenters, not just, those that have history degrees or that are history teachers, for instance. But I believe, Stu Taylor has some of the best knowledge about, old Placerville, old Hangtown. And I think she would be a great presenter to bring about, trying to understand where the name came from, why the news happened, what was the original meaning behind it, and then look at it, objectively with other historical presenters that can kind of bring it about in looking at it from a different perspective. And so if there is some type of application to be filled out to be considered to be a presenter or an educator for just the educational facet of going about this method, if that can be made available to the public in some sort of way, that would be great. And I look forward to moving forward on this process. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian.
Kristen, go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Kristen.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. I sent in my written statement yesterday or today, and these other callers were just fabulous that I just heard. I think education is super important with the history of Placerville. I think when people are educated, they can form better decisions. But, I don't agree with the whole changing the news logo. I do think we're headed down that whole council culture, which is, in my opinion, toxic. So I think looking at it down the road, if we do remove Old Hangtown in the news, how does this affect businesses that carry on that name and historical landmarks that have Hangtown, historical archives? I just worry that they're going to have to change their name. They're going to have to change their logos, their menus, their merchandise, etc. So I do think the history lesson is important for people, but I do think it should be reserved for community members only. I don't know where this outrage is coming from with the Hangtown name in the news, but, growing up in Placerville, I learned a lot, and I had a grandmother that owned a store on Main Street. So I'm very familiar, and the people are wonderful, just wonderful people, 40 years, wonderful. So I think that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kristen.
Kirk Smith, go ahead.
I appreciate the analysis and the hard work that was put into providing this kind of outline. I guess I'd ask you to pause for a moment and ask yourselves, why are you having that presentation? And the answer is, it all has to do with the controversy surrounding the nickname adopted in 1849. Yet there are all these other subjects, and I can't imagine you being able to cover them adequately in a couple hours. It's like you're going to cover the world in 3 hours. I mean, it's just too much. And then it comes to, who would you have making presentations on things like the Native Americans? Would you get the Red Hawk group or the Miwok group? then you're going to get a dumpster fire. So the thing that's of most interest to us is that related to number 2, the history of those names. It was dry diggings because there wasn't any water. Well, the water system was built from 1852 to 1872. Then you were able to have placer mining water. So the history of the name, I'd like to know about. And I think that the more historians you have, the better. Why? Because they don't all offer the same views, even when they're offering and relying on the same information. You need credibility, because after all, a number of folks had said months ago how they'd already made up their minds, were ready to vote. So you want to have something that makes sure that the public has an adequate understanding of the subject. Also, when it comes to your concerns about, are we really discouraging commerce? Are people avoiding us because of that nickname? How do you know? All you have so far is anecdotal. And when it comes to the value of it as a tourist item, that too is anecdotal. Like watching during the day. People take photographs all day long, and probably just as often as the bell tower. So it's a draw. And so I really think that if you want to find out about how it's perceived outside, do a survey in that respect. Ultimately, it's our decision, the people of this town, and I think it needs a vote by the public. I guess I'm the third one, at least, to say that so far. That's what I'd ask you to do. Revise the list to bring it down to just number 2, the history related to that name. If people perceive it as offensive now, that's one thing, but make sure that people understand the history of it. That would help for thoughtful discussion. I hope you'll do that. Thank you.
Elizabeth Dubose, go ahead.
Well, this is Lizzie. Hope you guys are having a good Tuesday. I just want to say thank you, Kara Taylor. You had mentioned that this would be a good idea to represent a broader story of Placerville, including local artists that affects change and movement. And I really like that. So thank you. And thank you, Cleve, for preparing this and having this step by step so we can all follow along. This is super helpful, especially at a time like this where everything is kind of uncertain. I like that everything's kind of laid out like this. My kind of questions or statements are related to the 6 topics that you had mentioned, 6 topics by presenters. So I would just keep in mind to make sure that there is not only racial, but also generational representation for the presenters and the selected speakers, and that millennials and Gen Z are not left out. Also, I know that this is a hard topic, but given the atmosphere and environment of what's going on right now, I would highly encourage you to add a presentation topic on suicide by hanging and mental health, as current education leaves out voices of people in the community who have witnessed firsthand a dead person with a noose around their neck, which would be first responders, family members, friends, loved ones, who have killed themselves this way. And I know that this is hard, but just given the recent time last week in the Mountain Democrat, I had read that there was a 12-year-old girl who lived in Pollock Pines who was struggling with her mental health, and she committed suicide. And I understand that a lot of these things that happen in the world, the response is, oh, well, that's not happening here. It's not happening in Placerville, not in our town. Well, you know, Pollock Pines isn't Placerville, but it is still El Dorado County. And when I read that in the newspaper, it broke my heart. And I live in Pollock Pines, and it's just hard to know that it is happening here, and we all struggle with it. And I think that it goes hand in hand. There is a big history here with the noose as one thing, lynching as another, Hangtown as one, and also mental health as a fourth. So I would highly recommend you think about this for this presentation, please. And I just wanted to quickly say that equity is the quality of being fair or impartial, and inclusion is the action or state of including or being included within a group or structure, which I believe these 4 steps are handling quite well. So thank you so much, and have a good day, you guys.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Caller 857, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening, Michael.
Hey, so I think you should really just put this to a public vote ASAP, separate yourself from the controversy, and then defend the decision of the electorate. Aside from that, I love the educational portion. I do have concerns on how the city would choose the presenters. At a minimum, I suppose if you have opposing views, you should have opposing presenters, just to be fair. I would like you to add to the meeting process information on how this could be put to a public vote, what the process would be, what the costs would be. City council can put things on the ballot. Public initiative can be put on the ballot. Just some quick information to the public on how putting it to a vote could happen and what the costs are. Also, the adding it to a regular election versus a special election. And I think you really should keep the meeting solely focused on the logo, not the nickname of Old Hangtown. I'm pretty sure Old Hangtown was never an official name for Placerville. So somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And I think the final decision, if you do come up with different logos to adopt, one of the final choices needs to be no project. Logo as is, just like with CEQA. One of the final choices is keep it as is. That's how CEQA works. I think you should follow that. I really don't like the outsiders having a say in how we decide as citizens of the city on what our identity is, how we present ourselves. That's us, and we live or die by our choices. I really don't like this group, La Raza. They've been chiming in lately, and they really are a supremacist group, and they need to be separated out. As for somebody mentioned the children having a say on this is an adult decision. We need to have the adults make the decision. When the children become adults, they can change things to their liking. But right now, children, it's an adult decision. So just some of my thoughts. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Jelana Torres Velasco, go ahead.
Hi. So I'm 14 and I've been living in Placerville my entire life. And ever since I was little, like the news being there has always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It's just, I don't understand what the point is. I mean, I understand it's part of our history, but so is slavery and so is stealing land from the indigenous. Doesn't mean we use that as symbolism to represent our town. I don't know. It just doesn't make much sense to me. And I don't know why people are so attached to the idea of killing people with a rope. Yeah, I don't get it, but thank you.
Thank you, Jelana.
Caller 368, go ahead.
Hi, Council. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
I haven't weighed in on this news issue before, but since I was listening to tonight's meeting, I thought I'd listen to the callers, and I just want to kind of respond to some of that and also my own views. I agree with some comments about taking a public survey. One way that you could do that to see how people traveling through here, whether there are county citizens or visitors, is ask the Chamber of Commerce or the Visitors Bureau to acknowledge that and create a survey, get the data, see how people actually view this issue beyond the city borders of the city of Placerville. This whole controversy about whether history alone is our guide, I have a really, really difficult time with that. I grew up here, but I spent a lot of time when I joined the military overseas in different countries where people are hung because they're hunted down and, they're killed for who they are. And, that's not something to celebrate. And, if we're celebrating history, just imagine if the city of Tulsa, for example, was selling T-shirts and trinkets celebrating their race massacre of 1921. That's nothing to be proud about, and neither is hanging an effigy on Main Street in the year 2021 and making that symbol of a noose part of our city government logo or seal. In this day and age, regardless of history, that just is a insult to the standards of human decency and civility, no matter where we're from. People come here from all over the world. They travel through El Dorado County, whether they're coming to Placerville or not. And that's something that they see and they take with them. And it's just really out of place in my view. There's a place for this history. I agree with everybody talking about the history. It's important to understand that history. But I think that you can gather that history and document it. And I think that's important. And then put that history and that effigy on Main Street in the museum next to the fairgrounds. It's an excellent museum that has a lot of excellent El Dorado County history. And you can put it there and anybody can go see it and take advantage of that history. But to display it as part of our government, I just think is outrageous. And, just imagine if you took that effigy and that seal and you put it on a billboard on the El Dorado County border and said, hey, welcome to El Dorado County. And that was the symbol that people saw as they passed through our county. I think it would just take on a whole different tone and it would be reprehensible. Just imagine the outrage that you're welcoming people with a symbol of hatred and death. And, no matter the cause, it's a taking of someone's life. And I just think this whole conversation about history and who decides, it's just kind of out of place. I agree with the callers that say, make a decision. You're the city government. Make a decision in this day and age. Is all this appropriate? I think you're taking the right steps, but I don't know if you're asking the right questions. But at least you're talking about it, and that's a start.
Yeah, your time is up. If you could wrap up your last sentence there, I'd appreciate it.
That's it. I just think, have the conversations, get the information, but make a decision with the modern day and age in mind. I mean, that's all.
Thank you very much.
Holly Jones, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Awesome, great, thanks. I appreciate you guys taking the time and energy to put this together. I appreciate Vice Mayor Taylor's comments and the consideration for the process. I think that my greatest concern with this is the length of time that this process is going to take. I feel like going well into the summer with this is too long after we have at this point spent a considerable amount of time on this issue already. So I would encourage you to expedite this process in any way that you feel as you can. And one thing regarding the education aspect of all of this, 5 of the 6 topics are about the past in Placerville, and I understand why that is relevant to this conversation. What's not included is the fact that almost 5,000 people were lynched in America. It's not included that lynching was a way to terrorize Black people. And I think that without including that history of the noose and why it is problematic, we're not really, we're denying the public a holistic view of this controversy. And I think it's important to understand that. So I would encourage you to consider adding why a perceived hate symbol, as you called it, being on a city logo is a problem. So thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you, Allie.
Julie Robinson, go ahead.
Hi, council members. Thank you for this well-planned community involvement format. I think it's excellent. I think this is a U.S. issue, not just a Placerville issue. Our 14th Amendment declares that all are equal and protected under the law. Councilman Taylor said she hopes people will stop by in Placerville this summer. For those of you who value education, I'd like to share a former EDC resident statement. Blair Phipps wrote, "This is why I was raised to never go east of Cameron Park without my parents, and why, as a kid, I might have to hold my pee a little bit longer on the way to Tahoe. That's growing up Black in El Dorado County." Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Brian Chapman, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thank you, Council. I appreciate this opportunity. Council Vice Mayor Taylor, I appreciate your comments. I appreciate the comments that have come from all of the supervisors. I appreciate all the time that Cleve put into working this out. One thing I will point out, this question has nothing to do with history. The symbol, the illustration that we're discussing is an internationally recognized symbol of hate and violence. It's one of the things that the Nazis in Europe and Germany used to intimidate Jews. It's one of the things that we have used in this country since its inception to put people in their place and keep them there. The idea that it's an illustration and not a symbol is absolutely ludicrous. I agree with the one gentleman who brought up the fact that what we're discussing here is the wrong question. The history is wonderful. It should be in a museum. It should be discussed. It should be in schools. It should be in books. This is not a historical question. This is a question of values. This is a question of morality. This is a question of judgment of whether or not this council and the people herein do think that they are responsible for their actions. Recently, this last year, or a little over a year, you'll notice that the people of Mississippi have decided that they don't need to have the image of a rebel battle flag on the flag of their state. The reason for that is because it too is a symbol of hate. Yes, it's just an illustration, but an illustration is a symbol. And symbols have consequences. And the reality is that this whole discussion about whether it was historically accurate or not is irrelevant. A noose is a symbol of violent hate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brian.
Melinda Velasco, go ahead.
Hi.
Hello, Melinda.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm of a mind, you guys probably know that just move forward. If this is the format that is going to work for most of the community, then this is the format that's going to work. I like all the different elements of it. I like the education part. I like the community. I'm a teacher, so you guys know that. So, you know, people like to put their input into what's happening. So I think that'll work for a lot of people because they'll be able to, they'll feel like they have a voice. That's great. So that's a good way to do it. Also, if you guys decided on your own to go ahead and make a move, I would be in complete support of you getting rid of the noose as the symbol for Placerville. Yeah, so that's what I've got. And thank you. I do want to thank Mr. Morris and Ms. Taylor and Ms. Borelli, council members Borelli and Vice Mayor Taylor for all of your hard work on this. I really, really, really want to thank you guys for this, and Mr. Morris actually, who's been on this since last year, and I just really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Melinda.
Gail Hesselgesser, go ahead.
Gail, could you unmute yourself? All right, Mr. Connell, let's go ahead and come back to him. Or him.
Okay, Kathy Lishman, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My feeling is this process gets us away from the yes and no that has taken place meeting after meeting. It's time to move forward. I think of this as more than a logo. I see it as the city seal, a reflection of the city itself. As was said previously, this only applies to the city and not to private property. As one person said tonight, the council has the right to make the decision. And I think the city has the right to remove the symbol of the news. I'm in support of the process, and it seems like you have a few details to work out. This is a great time and opportunity for an update, engaging the community and involving community input. Also highlighting local artists and their renderings of aspects of Placerville's rich history. This is another huge plus. We are emerging from a year of uncertainty and disruptions. Why not do it in style with an inclusive community project? I see this as a way to pivot away from the conflict. Beyond the logo, images resulting from this process could be utilized in so many other ways for the community, bringing Placerville's rich history to the forefront for residents and visitors to enjoy. Placerville is the only city on the Western Slope, and many people in the county consider Placerville their community. When we worked on downtown revitalization, many county residents participated and gave input and had enthusiasm, but ultimately it came back to the council. I like the process that you're doing. I think in the end, the ultimate decision should be up to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, we're just waiting. We have no more people. If there's anybody else that would like to speak on this item. All right, looks like Gail's back. Let's give it a try.
Gail, go ahead.
All right, can you hear me now?
We got you, Gail. Good.
Ah, great. I had many things I wanted to say and I got distracted by the muting. The historical aspect, I'm a little concerned about the context, the historical context at that time. In 1849, it was also a time of tremendous massacres against the native people. That was part of the context of what was going on in that world at that time. And a year later, we had a governor in California who ordered extermination of all the native people. I hope that that aspect of the history gets included, that the selection of history to be told includes the horrors that were happening at the context at the time that Hangtown got its name. I appreciate the process that you all are doing as far as who should decide. And I think that people of Placerville within the city limits should make their voices heard. I live about 30 feet outside the city limits, so I couldn't vote. But the Placerville City Council should definitely make the decision. But I would like you also not to take into consideration not only the popular opinion, but also your responsibilities as leaders that take into consideration government guidelines for protection of groups that are targeted for various reasons. There are guidelines on that, and hate symbols are not unrelated to that concern. So it was mentioned that it's an ethical and moral concern, but also it's just a governmental responsibility to be sure that that these federal guidelines are followed. So I think those are my main points. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. All right, currently we have no one else in the queue waiting to speak on public comment. I am going to give us just a couple more seconds here so that we make sure everybody has their opportunity to speak. All right, we're going to go ahead and close public comment at this point and bring it back to the council for discussion. I really appreciate the diverse amount of comments, the ideas of how to do this and recommendations and thoughts on this. It certainly gives me a lot to consider as we move through this conversation now. And so I'll open it up to our council for any comments as we go through this. Yes, Vice Mayor Taylor.
If you'd like, I can clarify a couple of the things that kept coming up during public comment.
That would be great.
In terms of, who's going to be part of the decision making and the polling and all of that, the intention is definitely to have it be locally focused. Citizens of the city of Placerville, businesses, greater Placerville area would all be considered, but the intention is to have it be locally controlled. And this is one way that this format varies from just having it at a council meeting where anyone can call in and we really have no idea, where comments are coming from. So that's kind of another benefit of this process. And then there was a lot of great suggestions for the presentation. One issue that I had with the presentation at the past meeting is that it's really, not everyone's going to agree on who's chosen to present and the format of the presentation. And you could kind of go on and on and on about that. And that was something that I got kind of hung up on. I think that we have a good presentation scheduled, and I want to thank all of the presenters that have agreed to be part of it. And I just want to clarify, the presentation it's not a debate. It's not arguing about the news or the nickname. The purpose of this presentation, if you choose to go this route, is really to show the full story of Placerville, to inspire the community to submit ideas about what they think is cool about Placerville. It's not, I'm sure the news and the hanging and Hangtown and the nickname will be covered, but that's not the focus of it. The focus is the wider story of Placerville, so that people will be inspired to participate in this process.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Taylor. Councilmember Borelli.
I'm glad Kara said everything that she said. I do tend to agree, and I just want to make it really clear that these presentations we're going to insist that they're unbiased, that they're just the facts. And I know that the folks, there was one caller that said, we were going to get their biased, and that's not it at all. And we're trying really hard to choose the presenters that are going to just give us the facts. And one more time, I think I've said it at least 10, the hanging dummy downtown is not under our control. So I really, that's a whole different issue, and but it's a private issue and we have no control over it. So I really want to reiterate that. But this has been a really great progress, and I have to tell you, it's going to be difficult because I have gotten, I don't know how many emails, and none of them agree on how this name was arrived at. So that's going to be interesting. There's so many stories out there. So that's what we're really trying to get at, and get the, again, go back to just the facts. So hopefully that'll happen.
Thank you, Patty. Yes, Councilmember No.
Well, I'll start this. First, I do want to thank Carrie and Patty and Cleve. You obviously put a lot of work into this, and I really do appreciate all the work that's put in. I'm a little frustrated because I feel like every time we come back to discuss this, the conversation is changing from what we were previously discussing. last time you asked us to be very clear on what we wanted, and I thought that we were very clear that we wanted to poll our residents. You know, Michael offered to send out the flyer. We talked about polling our businesses and getting that feedback to kind of decide what the, you know, if we wanted to move forward to, you know, with a logo change or something like that. So I feel like we're skipping over the data points and the input that we wanted, and you just kind of skipped over that, and kind of it's almost presumptuous that we're gonna change the logo. And I know you said, oh, well, we don't have to, but we're going to go through all this and then we might not change the logo. And I think that's frustrating for people who put out the time and effort also. I mean, I really just understood just before this meeting that we were no longer talking about taking Old Hangtown off of the welcome sign or the police cars or the patches. That's what we had talked about last time. And I was looking for clarification. And now this time, I mean, if I'm confused, I'm guessing other people are confused as well, that we're only talking about the logo and only the logo on the letterhead and not on all the, you know, it's very confusing and convoluted. And I had said originally that I thought that the Hangtown conversation was much greater, much bigger, and going to get a lot more muddy, and was the expression Carrie used, the dumpster fire. I feel like we're going there, you know. I feel like we're at that point where, you know, when they say when you find yourself digging a hole, throw away the shovel. And I want to throw away the shovel because, you know, as you heard a lot of people, they just want to put it to a vote of the local residents. They're not happy with the process. They're, you know, people who want it gone, they're happy with the process. And I feel like we haven't really gotten there. Michael, do you want to speak? I mean, I have a motion to make, but I'm
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Again, Patty, Kara, Cleve, this is like, you know, rolling the boulder up the hill to see it roll back, you know, down on your head. I think to some degree as we try to figure our way out through this thing. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, the one thing I thought was I do think one meeting's challenging for all this information. I think a couple of callers mentioned that. I do too. I had always assumed that this would be a probably a few meetings to, you know, get a lot of information out there, because I do think context matters. In whatever decision is ultimately made, it's good for people to have the context as to why something was done or not done. And I don't know that that can be shoehorned into a 2-hour, 3-hour, even a 4-hour meeting. So I was hoping for a little bit more meetings. And yes, it's going to take more time. And I've said that from before. I don't think I've changed my position that, yeah, we'll have people calling every first and third or second and fourth Tuesday to talk about this issue. And that's what we all signed up for. But I do think that, you know, having a little bit more time to hear stuff and really, you know, and I don't know who these people are that are going to get, but are they historians from Sacramento State? Are they from Davis? Are they just locals that have some history? You know, I'd want to know what that looked like as well. Let's see, what else did I want to say? I do think it is kind of jumping a little bit. I mean, the fact that we're going to go to a kind of an option of people get to pick the logo kind of presumes that the logo is going to change. I mean, if that's the case, we might as well go back to the original format of let's just erase the noose off the logo. Like I said, I've never been a fan of the noose on the logo. I didn't even know there was a noose on the logo for all the time I lived here, because you really can't see it. And then once I knew about it, I was like, oh yeah, it's probably not the greatest look. And I would imagine, this is a 2020 issue to some degree, I would imagine the vast majority of people had no idea that there was actually a noose on the logo or paid very little attention to it, but it is where it is for, you know, where we are today. So I'd like a little bit more clarification on the meeting and kind of what that looks like. and then what that step 2 process looks like in terms of the public outreach. Because I thought we were gonna, and when we had discussed it, and I said I would pay for it, would be to poll our residents and ask some questions about what they thought of it. You know, do they want to change it? Do they want to just raise the nukes? Do they want to keep the old label? I mean, just to get some baseline data from our actual residents to see where they're at. I mean, whether it's 80-20 or 49-51, I still think it's good to have that information before we did something. I mean, it has been called Old Hangtown for 170 years. I don't know how long a noose has been on the logo. I think that's another thing I'd love to find out. I mean, I'd volunteer time. I don't know, Cleve, if there's boxes somewhere in some warehouse that has old documents that we could go through, but I know you've gone through some on the 4th floor, but I gotta think there's more stuff in other places as well. But it would be interesting to know, like, is it 1974 or is it 1922? I mean, doesn't mean that something can't change, but I do think the context of the 1970s for the greater public versus the 1920 makes a lot of difference as well. Especially, I think, for all the people that have grown up with Old Hangtown and the noose. I didn't. But I know a lot of people in town that did, and I do want to respect that process for them. So I'm having some trouble with the way it's currently laid out. So I was hoping maybe for some more context from Vice Mayor Taylor or Patty to some of my concerns, and then how we, where we go forward. Thank you.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
So after speaking with Janice Matthews, the professional facilitator, she kind of steered us towards this direction of having, developing options where the community buys into it. And lots of people are involved, giving feedback and buy-in, and then presenting options for people to consider other than just a for or against. The consensus after speaking with her is that this for or against situation that we've been in for a year is not productive for the community, and that this is a more productive way to move forward and to bring people together, which I agree with. And that's, and I think that the rest of the committee agreed with as well. And that's how we ended up down this track.
I was going to say the same thing, that she seems to think that if we present this that's been laid out, this education, that it gives people food for thought in making a decision before we do the survey, Michael, because we did talk about that. And like Kara said, right now it's either no way, they're not going to change it, or yes, I want it changed. And this might give people a little bit more food for thought in, making their decision. So that's how we arrived at that, was through her recommendation.
I'm not sure why a question of, do you want a change to the logos, just to find out where people think, how is that I don't know why that would be a road that would be that would be fraught. I get having, and I think, because if whether or not, 80% of the town said they don't want to change, but we as a council have the right to certainly do that still, and still wanted to, and then put, different logo in front of the public to see. That to me seems like the more logical approach to it, as opposed to putting new logos in front of the public and then asking for a survey after that. Is sort of, I think, it sort of puts already a slant on it at that point. Or am I mistaking that there still would be a survey, or is the survey only in and of itself of looking at these different logos?
Well, my understanding is there would be a survey, but we want to present this, program, and, with all the different folks and presenters that have been that are listed here.
And we discussed having a survey go out in the water bill, after we've gotten community ideas and done the artist contest where we get artist logos back, then that survey would go out potentially in the water bill or other methods. And the original logo would be part of that.
And really stressing that the original logo is going to, I mean, that's going to be presented too.
So instead of having a yes, no option, you would have a couple of options and the original logo would be one of those options.
So where does, I look at Michael's idea of this survey as kind of I can't think of the right word, an opportunity for us to kind of gauge how to proceed once we do education. I kind of looked at this program survey, the logo presentation, it's kind of slipping it in there. And what would be the time frame of something like that, Michael? Just out of curiosity, if we were to go that route.
To do the survey. I mean, I think if we came up with like, some questions, we could send it out before the next water bill. And then, we could then go to, I mean, I like the idea of the community input for the logo. I think that's, we could have some great ideas. We still got to figure out how we would matriculate that down. If we get 100 of them, we're probably not going to send out 100 logo ideas to people. So we'd have to narrow it down, aside from, as Kara and Patty said, the original one. But I do think my expectation was that we were going to survey our businesses, our residents, and I think there was some talk that students had already been surveyed as well, to hear that the sort of Gen Z idea, or at least none of these things are real polls in the sense that they're scientifically done, but it does give you a little bit more of a baseline. And I thought that's what we had talked about the last meeting.
Yes, Kara.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So what are you hoping to, if we send out a for or against survey and people come back and they say, yes, we're open to changing the logo, then we go through this whole process and we send out another survey later with a bunch of logos? Or if the surveys come back and they say, I mean, I don't know, it's just why do a for or against when, so say people want the logo changed, we don't have any product after that other than knowing that they want the logo changed. Whereas if we do this other route, we have, options for people and it gets us further down the road.
Because to me, that's like a push pull. If I put out a poll that says, do you want to increase your taxes $100 versus, it sort of presupposes what that's going to be. If I put out a poll that shows you these different logos, kind of presupposes the question, at least in my mind. And I have done polls for 25 years. And so I kind of understand the process of how you put information out to the public. And to me, that seems like it kind of presupposes the question.
Yeah, but don't you give these people a reason? I mean, when you send out a poll, don't you put you have wording behind, when you ask the question. So, but if we sent out one and it would be a yes or no, I mean, we can't give anything. And that's why I think that Janice is suggesting this education, to educate the people how, and give them a reason. Okay, so they've heard the presentation and the history. Well, maybe it might change somebody's mind, in their way of thinking. They've heard the reasons that this question is being posed to them.
I guess I'm not seeing the education part. What's the education behind a few logos for people to decide on?
I think I could answer that, and that the programs, the educational side of it, that what we're looking at the 7th, the 6 presentations will give a baseline education of the city, where that has come from. And then we roll into that aspect of, okay, if we were to change a logo, what would it look like? And we explore those options, and with the education, with the few options of logos, people can decide that I saw the education, I see some new logos, I see the same old logo, which one do I want? And I think it would be important along your lines, Michael, that we do that survey in a very methodical way that reaches the audience that we choose. I know Jackie's been asking she's been looking to ask a question here for a bit, or make a statement.
Well,
I just have some comments on what we were saying, you know, and when we were talking about a facilitator, you know, it was highly recommended by me by more than one person that we were going to find a facilitator who was out of the area to ensure non-bias and, you know, not really have a stake at all. And my understanding is this facilitator lives very locally, you know, and so they already kind of probably have their ideas. And I feel like that's why this, you know, new logo conversation has come about. I feel it's possible that it's come from a biased position, you know, whether you acknowledge it or not. And I want to take it back to why are we doing this? Because between the last meeting and this meeting, I took the time to go watch your meetings last June, last July, you know, and review all our stuff. And so how did this all start? This started last year with an online petition when someone said, I want to take Old Hangtown off of the welcome sign. And then another group started the opposite petition that said, no, we don't want to take Old Hangtown off the welcome sign. And, you know, I went and looked at those petitions yesterday. And, you know, if you want a poll of your area people and how they feel about Old Hangtown, 75% of the people don't want to take it off, 25% do. I mean, there's a number you have for something that's been polled for the last year. So it started with the welcome sign. Then it was just take the noose off the logo. And now we're to a logo contest. And is this really where we want to be? Is this the best use of our time? Is this, you know, what we need to be doing? Kind of thoughts I have.
Thank you. I can't help but to recognize some of the frustration of the effort that has gone into from, if I see it correctly, I don't know, of Vice Mayor Taylor and I don't know about Councilmember Borelli. And yet I think we got to find an expedient way to get this to a resolution.
Well, Mayor, if I may, I mean, yes. I feel like the clock started on January 1st because we said, I mean, let's step back. I mean, this hasn't been going on for a year because we've just not wanted to do it. We said that there is a pandemic going on, so we didn't do it for basically a year. Right. So it's not like the clock's been ticking this whole time. I know people want to change it and just want it done with, but the clock started ticking when we said we were going to come back at the beginning of the year and do this. So this isn't like we've just been sitting on our rear ends and not doing anything. Yeah.
And I have to express my frustration in how long it's taken us to get here, not because we haven't done anything, but because of the pandemic. You know, my original thought was and recommendation was we move it to January. And I thought there's no possible way we wouldn't be meeting in person in January. And yet here we are in March and we're having this conversation via Zoom. Boy, let's see. We have the recommendations of Cleve and Kara and Patty, and yes, Jackie.
I'm going to take a stab at emotion like I always do.
Oh, okay.
You know, I like the presentations, the education part. I think that we need to do it. I think that's a part that has been missing all along. So I would like to see us go ahead and move with that education day that we were going to do. You know, Patty and Kara have heard from the people if they want to change the format or not. I trust the committee to, you know, do the presenters and you know, in that fashion. I feel that, you know, in January we brought in Hangtown and that has just put everything sideways. And so my motion would be to have our education meeting and whenever that is. I mean, I know we said the 7th, but you know, I feel like Michael does in the fact that we really want thorough presentations. You know, we don't want to like, oh, we just hurried it up, you know, so if it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever, let's have some really good presentations with some research, you know, people being able to document those facts, you know, and so that people can really understand that. And then I think the following city council, we should vote on whether to take the noose off the logo or not and be done.
I'll second.
All right. any discussion on that? I think that, so essentially you want to, let me ask you to understand this correctly. You want to have the presentations on the April 7th and the following council meeting. You want to have an up or down vote on removing just the noose from the logo.
Correct.
Okay.
The
Any other- Yes, Patty?
The question is, and Cleve did state this, what if we cannot get all, all the presenters and have it all ready for that April 7th date?
That's why my motion was whenever we have that presentation, the following council meeting.
I thought that's what you said, but I just
Okay.
wanted to clarify.
All right. Yes, Vice Mayor Taylor.
Well, we have all the presenters for that date, right?
I don't know, Cleve, are they locked in?
Yes. Let's see, they are locked in with the exception of the one, Patty, that you and I talked that you were going to check with. The others I did hear back from. We have been talking to historians with the history department in Sac State. We have 2 of them that are locked in to do part of the presentation. And I believe all of the others, we have talked to the people with the exception of Patty, the one that we were working on with you. So
I'm sure she'll be fine. And I want to reassure Jackie that the lady Janice that we've talked to, she in no way, shape or form offered an opinion, a personal opinion. She is a facilitator and I believe that, she holds her standards to that.
Cleve or Kara or Patty, who would be the presenters? I'd be interested to know who they are.
yeah, you want me to list those?
Yeah,
Kara?
Cleve, you've got the names, so.
I'm not sure I do, but
Oh.
let me do it. Let me pull it up here. I think I can name them. So under the history of Native Americans in Placerville, we have asked Erin Young of the Wapumas Nisenan Miwok tribe. I think you know who she is. She ran for city council a while back. For the early settlement gold rush, we have one of the historians from Sac State, number 2. And number 3, we have another historian from Sac State. Number 4 would be Carol Sexton, a local historian here in Placerville. Number 5, we have asked John Clarici to report on current demographics, major industries, current challenges, and are exploring the role of us as the county seat. And then number 5, role of minority groups in Placerville area history. We've asked Michael Saunders to present that. Did I get those all right, Kara? Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one of the things that if it's a remove the noose, if it does go in that direction, I'm more interested in seeing what our community comes up with in terms of reinventing how we want our outward expression. That's not just taking one element off of a noose, off of a logo, but to reinvent who we would like to be. It's an opportunity to discover, do we still like that one minus the noose, or do we like something different? And so I'm really interested in exploring those opportunities and seeing where that goes. I think that if we choose to go with that direction to begin with, and so that also, like we've talked about, would include a variety of those. So I kind of like, I'm still back on how we, I don't mind making a vote, but I would prefer to vote for removing or exploring or keeping. That's 3 votes. So I'm not sure how that would work, but I'm actually interested in that.
You're talking about the noose?
Yes, I'm talking about the logo itself. The whole logo is reevaluating what our logo looks like. It's an outward expression. And from time to time it changes. It has changed many times over the years, and I think that if we move in that direction, of changing it, I would like to see what it looked like to reinvent it.
currently. I don't want to amend my vote.
All right.
I'm taking this back to the decision that you guys and the direction you guys took last July. You know, if we want to explore that afterwards, we can reopen that conversation and look at that, what that looks like. But that's an entirely new conversation that just started tonight. And so I'm not ready to move with an entirely different conversation where you've thrown out all the other questions that I've asked, not answered them, rolled over it and moved on. You know, if we want to bring back a motion to bring a new item to that, I would definitely consider that, but this has gotten so muddied, confusing and complex that I'm not in support of the direction that was brought to me tonight.
All right. Yes, Vice Mayor Taylor.
You know, this process was kind of what I thought would happen after we took the yes or no vote to remove the news. And speaking with Ms. Matthews, she made me realize that we did not have to have that really highly contentious meeting, this yes or no battle first. We could not have that, and go this other route and get to, you know, a better outcome with more community involvement. And
so you said the original logo would be one of the choices. So the original logo having the news.
Yeah, I think maybe you misunderstood what I was saying. What I was saying is, you know, before coming around to this process, and speaking with the facilitator, I kind of had in my mind that we would have a council meeting where we would vote yes or no to remove the noose. And then that would trigger a process where if the noose was going to be removed, we would then kind of go through this exploratory phase to figure out what was going to be next. So this, you know, speaking with the facilitator, she made me realize that we did not have to have this highly contentious yes or no vote first. We could go into the exploratory process and it would be more productive to make that decision after we had more options and a lot of community feedback. So that's, I realize that this issue has been evolving. We've been doing the best that we can. I think I can speak for the people that have been working on this, that we've been coming with this with the best of intentions, to try to find solutions for this problem that has been brought before us. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the process.
I already made a motion.
Kara, we have a motion on the floor. So let's go ahead and call the vote on the.
Okay, can I make one more comment?
Yeah.
We all get to make those comments.
You bet.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we've kind of already opened that can of worms that the next step is removing Old Hangtown. And so pretending like that isn't part of the conversation is disingenuous to me. And I have already stated, and I know that other council members have stated, that they see them as separate. And so this process, to me, attempts to roll them all together instead of having them separate. It's you know, it looks like an all or nothing to me when you look at, say, the original logo will be on there as an option. Well, if you don't like the news, but you're okay with Old Hangtown, you know, you're still being forced into the all or nothing vote and position, and I'm very uncomfortable with that.
All right. Any further comments?
Would you state your motion again, Jackie?
My motion is to have the presentations as you've outlined. Then at the next council meeting for us to vote on the noose. We end that issue. If a council member wants to bring up the next discussion, whether it's Old Hangtown or changing the entire logo or whatever, to me, that's a separate conversation. And, you know, if someone wants to bring that up with a better format or how that is, you know, they can do that. But I feel that the motion in front of me still is rolling them both together. And I want them separated.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. Ms. O'Connell, roll vote, please.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Zaragoza?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor?
No.
Mayor Thomas.
No. All right, that passes. And I would like to, if anybody would like to comment on this, feel free. I'm going to make a comment briefly that I appreciate the idea and I like the nuanced approach. And I will support the city in moving forward with this and move to help facilitate that. I wouldn't throw away the nuanced approach yet, because that still may be a valid process that we can continue once this once we follow this motion that we have done here. And I appreciate everybody's thoughts on it. Any further comments?
Get 5 minutes.
You bet. We'll take 5 minutes, and we're gonna take a break for 5 minutes. We'll be back at 8:09. Give an extra minute or two. Thank you. Let's go ahead and bring this meeting back to order. And we're on item 12.2 of our agenda. And that is approve a request for proposal for city attorney services for City of Placerville and authorize staff to release the request for proposal. And I might add that when I saw this, I felt very sad. And I have worked with John over the past 20 years, and I'll get into this later. But anyway, I'll turn it over. We'll talk about that a little bit. But yes, let's go ahead and Cleve, it's all you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I agree with your sentiments. Me too. I've only been here 10 years, but he will be missed, but fortunately will still be around. I still have his phone number. So just quickly, Mr. Driscoll was hired in 1989 as the city attorney. In 1998, he became city manager / city attorney. When I was hired in 2010, him and I talked again, and I convinced him maybe he wanted to convince me. He came back as just our contract city attorney at that time. And so he's been doing that for the last 10 years again, just as city attorney. It has worked very well. A lot of advantages of his knowledge of the city and his expertise as an attorney have been very beneficial to the city. But at this time, he's ready to retire again. I don't know if this is a second or third time or how many it is, but he's ready to retire again, and it's well deserved. And I admire him for what he's done, and I appreciate that. And we need to move forward at this point. So working with Mr. Driscoll, we pulled together an RFP, a request for proposals, and we have that attached to your report, to the staff report. And we also have listed a timeline. The timeline is very just tentative at this point, depending on how things go moving forward. With council approval, we will release the request for proposals as early as tomorrow and begin receiving proposals. So in that case, we would create a deadline of May 4th that gives a little over a month for them to prepare proposals and come back. I think the proposal is very detailed and will get us the information that we need to thoroughly evaluate those presenters that come in, or the proposals that come in. So with that, I will answer any questions that you may have. As you know, Mr. Driscoll is also on the line. So if you have questions for him, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer those also. So
I just want to know if, John, you'll be submitting a proposal as well.
I don't think this time.
I'm just checking. Okay, thought I'd ask. I'll open it up for questions for staff and John. Anybody at this moment?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank John for helping us through this process of finding a new attorney. We're really lucky to have you, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Oh, right. Yes, sir. Chief.
John, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Mayor. I just wanted to publicly acknowledge John and his mentorship. It's been extremely valued, especially for me in this position. And he sees me walking down a path that may not be the right one. He's quick to grab me and pull me back. And I'm glad Cleve clarified that we still have your number, Mr. Driscoll, and it'll be used from time to time. Thank you for all you do.
You're welcome.
So he's not gone yet, so let's not talk that into existence.
Let's go and go on on that.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up for public comment then. And Ms. O'Connell, if you could help me out, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Public comment is now open for item 12.2. This is the request for proposals for city attorney services. If you're joining by phone, press *9.
All right, looking. Oh, there you go.
Okay, caller 857, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
So call the just call the question. Just be aware that the cost of a new city attorney could shock you significantly. But anyway, it's time for a new one. That's all.
Thank you. All right.
Kathy Lishman, go ahead.
I probably worked with John longer than anybody, although I haven't worked with him in the last number of years. Starting in probably 1990, John became the city attorney, and I just hope that you can find someone with the knowledge and the experience. And I was on the council when John was the city manager, and now he's the city attorney again, and I'm sure his wife is making him retire. And don't count on having his phone number because he'll probably change it when he's not the city attorney anymore. Thanks, John, for all your service. It's been great to have you, and you will be missed by many.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. All right, we'll give it just a moment here to see if there's any more comments. All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to for any other comments or a motion. Yes, Michael.
Just a question. This might be one for Cleve and for Dave, but yeah, I know the high-priced Mr. Driscoll is going to be a lot different than when we go somewhere else. I'm just wondering how if we've sort of put aside or figured out how we're going to account for the increased cost, because there will be an increased cost. So I was just wondering, what that looks like.
I'll speak to that. We have got some estimates, both John and I, and talking to some of those that may submit, plus looking at other cities and what their costs are. I will tell you that my anticipation is that our general city attorney services will double when we go through this process, and is what we kind of expect, maybe around that anyway, but that's what we expect. And we will build that into this coming year's budget, and you'll see that as we go through that process. So.
Thank you.
I have all sorts of things that I'm going to say, but I'm going to hold them back until a date in the future, because this process is going to take a while. We'll have a lot of discussions, and I don't want him to start taking early retirement without leaving yet. I feel like he's on a short time here, but so I look forward to still working with you over the next 3 months is what we're looking at.
Absolutely.
All right, great. And so, yes, sir, Michael.
I was just going to say, I'll make a motion to approve the request for proposals.
All right.
I'll second.
If nobody votes, does that mean he stays?
I'm happy to vote against my own motion. It's
just
great.
checking. Okay. All right. If we get a roll call, please.
Councilmember Borelli.
Reluctantly, yes.
Councilmember No.
Aye.
Councilmember Saragosa.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Thomas.
No.
You're really sticking to it.
Mhm. All right. Reluctantly moving on here. I would like to move on to item 12.3, approve new meeting time and agenda format and authorize staff to proceed accordingly. Ms. O'Connell or Cleve? Here, Ms. O'Connell. Great. You're muted. There we go.
Thank you. So we are not actually changing the meeting time. The meeting time has already changed. As we know, we adopted the ordinance back in February. So just real quick, so we amended City Code Section 114.3, changing the start time for City Council meetings to 5 o'clock. And as part of that discussion, Council directed staff to provide a new format for the meeting with a time certain process for public comments, non-agenda items. So with the adoption of the ordinance on February 23rd, the new meeting time will take effect on the April 13th, 2021 meeting, and that is where we are discussing changing the format starting at that meeting. So the goal is to continue to have as much public input as possible, but to also avoid meetings running late into the evening, where decisions on critical items can be difficult. You'll see an outline of the agenda in your staff report. And so essentially staff is proposing that the time for public comment on items not on the agenda be pushed after the consent calendar. That would, we're hoping for a time specific time for this at 6:30. If there is time before 6:30 comes up, the City Council can always choose to move a discussion action item before that time. But then they would stop and have public comment on non-agendized items at 6:30. So there will be, we can try this new format for the first few meetings and see how it goes, and we can make amendments, as you may need. So basically it's just the consent calendar being flipped with the public comment non-agendized items. Those two are switching on the agenda.
And for clarification, we're not going to stop in the middle of an agendized item at 6:30. We'll complete that agendized item. So as close to 6:30 or shortly after, we will start
Correct.
public
Yes.
comments. All right. Okay.
But we won't start before 6:30. Is that correct on that?
I believe that's the intention. Yes.
Is-
So 6:30 or shortly after.
Correct. Cleve, do you want to jump in here? Because on the staff report, it does say that the City Council will have the flexibility to hear discussion action items before the public comment period.
Right, yeah. The intent is that we will try to put things like the consent calendar and very routine items will occur between our 5 o'clock start time and 6:30. Now, we're suggesting 6:30. That's up to the council. You could do that public comment at 6 or 6:30. Some of my concern is if we determine and say, we've only got 2 routine items and all of a sudden we're 5:30 and we're waiting for 6:30 then to do public comment. So you need to think about that. Now, what I mentioned in there is that does not stop the council from, let's say you hit 5:30, you've handled all of your routine items and consent calendar. You've got an hour before public comment. You would have 2 choices. As I see it, you could take a break at that point to wait for 6:30 to get there. Or you could look at the items that are scheduled after public comment and bring some of those forward. And so the public would need to know that agenda is flexible and you are allowed to move items forward on that to be discussed earlier if necessary. But I think, again, we suggested, Regina and I, the 6:30 time for public comment, but I'm definitely open to saying, should we do that at 6 o'clock perhaps rather than 6:30 in order to make sure that we hopefully don't have that gap between the time we finish routine items and when we get to public comments. So, but and again, we can kind of do this as a trial period for the first couple of meetings, either way, either time, and adjust that if we think we need to. So.
All right. Anybody have any thoughts on the 6:30 time? Is everybody good with that? I think that's the biggest factor. We can always just keep moving. The thing that I see, the challenge is if we start, getting things done quicker, which, happens sometimes. We could just continue bumping it down until we hit 6:30 and then we're good to go. And most of the things, well, people are still going to want to be commenting on those. It gets to be a little tricky because people are going to want to comment on some of those items that are after 6:30 and they're thinking in their head, 11's after 10. So I know that after 6:30, I'm going to be able to speak on that ordinance that's coming up or that public hearing. And so I wouldn't want to be moving those around too much. I think most people would be able to hit 6 o'clock. I would assume most people should be able to hit a 6 o'clock public comment timeframe. And I think that it might be beneficial to go to 6 instead of 6:30, although I can try 6:30 and see what happens. I'm kind of, yes, Patty.
Why are we making this time certain?
So that people, we talked about this, so that people know exactly when they can show up for public comment. Since we moved the hour from 6 to 5 o'clock, we didn't want to move public comment so close to 5 o'clock because tonight public comment occurred only about 10 minutes after we started the meeting, which would be 5:15. And I think we felt that would be too early in the day. People aren't getting home from work. They're not available to drive in their car and talk, or it makes it a little more challenging. And in light of having public comment, I think it's important to do that. Yes, Michael.
I've liked the idea since it was first proposed about a time certain. My only question, I think, to your point, Mayor, is I don't know that we're going to need an hour and a half between the start of the meeting and public comment. We had some unique things happen last year. I thought in terms of why public comment was sort of later into the motion. We had presentations from like Dr. Williams, and we were doing like fire and police reports. And sometimes we had some hot issues on those that pushed public comments back a little bit further. So it may have given us maybe the wrong impression about when public comments start. And I think we can kind of toy with, we can move that around. Like if we're going to have a presentation at 3.1 on something that's either controversial or may have a lot of questions, that public comments will probably be later at that point. Yeah. But for the most part, I agree with you. I don't think we're going to need that much time where we're going to constantly we're going to be moving 12.1, or other ordinances and things like that prior, because we're not going to need an hour and a half to get to public comments.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment. And so if you could help us out there, Ms. O'Connell.
Sure. Public comment is now open for item 12.3. This is regarding the agenda format for beginning on April 13th. Kathy, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good evening again. When this item came up about changing your meetings till 5:30, you were lobbied by someone who was a regular person on public comment. I do not think that public comment should be driving the agenda. I think the agendized items are the ones that should be driving the agenda. Anyway, I'm sorry that I think that, but I know public comment's important. It's gotten a little out of control. And I think the agenda items are more important. And I also think that that's true. Someone might look at public comment at a certain time and figure, well, the item I want is going to come up afterwards, but then that doesn't happen. You can do it and see what happens, but I think you were satisfying one person and maybe a few others who agreed that like to public comment all the time. But I think there's other things you could do. You could even move number 16, city manager and staff reports, up earlier in the meeting, because I think those are very important to the public. So I just don't think you should lock yourself into public comment driving the agenda and controlling things. And I think you can change the name of it to open forum so that public comment is actually the comment on agenda items and public forum is actually the one for non-agendized items. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, caller 857, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening, Michael.
Hey, I'd like to take off of what Kathy was proposing there. I like the time certain. So in the past, the public forum was anything not on the agenda. If you're going to change things so dramatically, I would like it to be where somebody could call in at 6:30, know that they can say, I don't know when you're going to talk about 12.7 or 4.6, but here's my quick thoughts on those items and allow that. That would be fair because we're really changing things up quite a bit here. I like the idea of a time specific for open forum, and just with my previous thoughts there was allow people to say, I want to speak to 12.7 real quick or 4.1, whatever. So I'm looking at the agenda right now. I'm scrolling through it, thinking of how to reorganize the agenda. I think the ceremonial thing should go to the end. Announcements and presentations to the end. Brief comments, which never tend to be brief, from council members should go to the end to be combined with council reports and staff reports. That should go to the end. Those are things that are kind of, for me, I'll just say inconsequential. And those could be filler. Say it's 5:30 and you're out of items. Well, you can bring those things up and talk about them real quick to fill it or take a break, whatever. But it's going to be interesting how if somebody sees a 12.7 item, they think it's going to come after 6:30, but all of a sudden you bring it forward and you speak about it at 5:30 and they were just not expecting that. All of a sudden they have no chance to comment on it. So I really want to concern about what items you move forward to talk about. It really should be the inconsequential stuff up until 6:30. And then the important stuff comes after. So hopefully you understand what I'm trying to get across, but it could be a problem. So good luck.
Thank you, Michael. All right, I'm going to give this just a brief minute here. Make sure we're all done with public comment. All right, seeing no other public comment, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the council. Yes, okay. Vice Mayor Taylor.
I agree with the concerns raised about getting into a situation where we have, time that we're moving agenda items around that night. So I would be in favor of moving the time certain up to either 6 o'clock or potentially doing away with the time certain, keeping the order of things, but the public can just know that somewhere between 5:45 and 6:30 is typically when public comment happens, and to tune in at that time.
I'm kind of in favor of moving it to 6 and being good with that. I think it's a good place to start and see how that works. Patty?
Well, I'm thinking, if it's going to pose a problem, if it's a big issue, I'm not sure that we shouldn't just, I kind of like Kara's first suggestion is just keep the agenda the way it is and let it land wherever it lands. And again, I bring it back to the Board of Supervisors meets during the day, and people, if they want to comment, they make sure that they're there to comment. And I don't think that we ought to allow this issue to dictate our meetings. I really don't.
Mhm. I think the goal is just to make sure that people have the opportunity to comment if they wish, and to, with moving our meeting to 5, it could eliminate or cause challenges for people, because we're in that funny time between people getting off work and going home and traveling, and it gives them an opportunity to plan. Any further comments? I would move we accept the item 12.3 is presented, except for time certain for 6 p.m.
A second.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was just going to say, as Regina said in the staff report, and I think you've said too, mayors, we can try it. If for some reason we're running into a lot of problems, we can revisit it and go back to it comes about when it comes about.
Yep. It's an easy fix. All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Burley,
No.
Councilmember No,
Aye.
Councilmember Zaragoza,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor,
Aye.
Mayor Thomas.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Moving on to 12.4, approve the construction of a community garden on the south edge of Duffy Park, and that the garden construction be funded and managed by the Key Club of El Dorado High School. And I'm going to turn this over to, well, we got 2 items. Item 1, item 2, authorize the Director of Community Services to negotiate and execute the memorandum of said contract. Now I'm going to turn it over to Terry Zeller, our Director of Recreation and Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Just a little background. I had the president of El Dorado High School's Key Club. His name is Jace Kalfunsky. He contacted my department, a little over a month ago, to talk about the possibility of establishing a community garden at Duffy Park. And the significance of Duffy Park, in his view, is that it's close to a large amount of apartment dwellers. Both the senior housing and the Cottonwood apartments are just up the hill from this park. And also the residents could have a dedicated raised bed garden plot to plant and harvest food for their own consumption. I thought it was a really good idea. So we did meet on site and talk about how that relationship might develop into the community garden between community services and the Key Club. And their idea would be that they would do the fundraising for the actual construction of the garden. That would include the beds, fencing, and a tool shed with tools. And they would oversee the assigning of plots. So they would be managing that community garden, and also the ongoing needs of the operation. They did talk about, I don't think I put it in my staff report, but they did talk about if there was a concern about people maybe trying to break through the gate or get over a fence or something to take produce, and that the Key Club had already thought of that. And a solution for them would be to plant kind of a sacrificial garden with a sign that said, if you want produce, here's some for you to take. It's worked in other communities pretty well that way. And really the city's obligation for the project to get things rolling would be to alter the irrigation system and also clear out a large area that is blackberry. It's overgrown with blackberry bushes right now, and it really needs to be taken care of for fuels in the first place. We're talking the toe of the slope, if you know Duffy Park, that rolls up the hill. This would not affect the turf area or change the turf sprinklers at all, or alter any of the existing recreational opportunities that park has. This is in a buffer area at the toe of the slope, and we did provide a map for you. I also have, see if I can share my screen. I've got kind of a little depiction of it also. Let's see. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Okay. Did I do it correctly? Okay. Let's do this one. Okay. So if you're looking at Duffy Park, can you see the park now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Where I've got the white arrow, there's a picnic table just to the left, just above and behind the swing set, above the sign that says Duffy Park. Right from that edge of the concrete, along that buffer zone, about to where the turf bows out. And you can see it pretty well on plan view from the attachment. That's part of the staff report, but I thought I would give you a little bit of a visual so you could picture where it would be in relation to the other elements that are in the park. So, so that's the idea. And so far the members of the Key Club have voted that they would like to move forward with this. They also have their teachers that are involved in the Key Club as their student liaisons. And they also, as you know, are focused and funded by the Kiwanis, who's also the group that put together the playground out there in the first place. And I did talk to them and they're very supportive of this project. I know there was some written correspondence that was received. I think that was in your packet also, about some concerns as far as tax money and community gardens and who should get precedent over that. And I'd be happy to provide my input. I think Jace was going to be in on this in public comment. Hopefully he is, but if he's not, or other members of the Key Club, I have a pretty good idea of things we've discussed to date, and I'd be happy to discuss that with the council. So I'll take any questions.
I have one question in that there's some really large trees around that area.
Yes.
Is that shade going to be any bit of a challenge with that?
It might be in early spring or late fall and overwinter gardening, but there's a lot of trees that lose their leaves. So I've been trying to keep an eye on it through the winter just to see, and the turf has been able to survive pretty well. And I think that as far as a good growing season, the sun is going to be high in the sky. And even though it's on the south slope, which is always the kind of the least likely place to put things, I don't think it's going to hinder the garden as far as growing things goes.
Okay. Yes, Kara.
Question. Do you have an estimate for what the water cost would be for gardens?
I don't particularly, but we're looking at either small bubblers or drip systems, so it wouldn't be a whole lot of water. There's about 6 different valves that run off to the, there's a lot of valves for that park. And so it's almost like it was made for some expansion. And this would be a really easy way to tap into that existing main line, because there's at least 5 valves that we could tap into. And the idea is from the Key Club, and I've also seen this work in gardens that I've been a part of, where they put battery timers on the different plots, and people just can keep track of their own water usage by setting those up. So it's pretty efficient unless there's a water break.
Okay, thanks.
And it's worth mentioning that that Duffy Park is in that tax district that's collected in Cottonwood, and our operating budget is about $10,000 for the year, and about half of that is dedicated to staff costs, and the other half is split between services and supplies.
Councilmember Borelli.
Terry, I know you thought about this and you did talk about it a little bit about, folks maybe breaking the fences down, but I saw what happened out at Lumsden Park and with the sprinklers and stuff. That was my biggest concern when I read. I love this whole idea, I have to tell you, but that was my concern, is about whether the water system would be vandalized.
Right, and that's always a concern for me to try to create. I don't want to create attractive nuisances, but at the same time, if you go out to Duffy Park on any particular day, it's a very lightly used park. I think that it's underutilized in a lot of respects. And the one thing that keeps a lot of vandalism and vagrancy from happening in a park is public participation in activities in that park. And I think if we have people that are there on a daily basis, different times of the day, accessing those plots, and we have a good showing of people that are willing to keep up the space and work well with the Key Club in the city, I think that there's going to be a lot less vandalism issues than Lumsden. The problem with Lumsden was all the activities were right near the gate. We just had our playground out there, and then we had that large area that backed up to the hills, and there were so many places to hide up there. I think it won't be, it's a different environment, and I'm not that concerned about it.
Good, thank you.
I'd like just a clarity on the cost will be, I don't know if what the right word is, attributed to the Cottonwood district. Is that correct? Or is the city now, are those water meters on that district as well, and they're charged for that? Or is that city water covered by city, and then any of the expenses associated with this?
As far as I understand from being here for a couple of years, the water meter itself, I don't see those bills. So that's something that goes through central accounting, the finance department.
And then all the associated costs with it are going to be absorbed in which budget?
The cost I see is a few $100s for the irrigation components, and any vandalism. We've already got dollars earmarked that are dedicated to staff, and I could say that we're probably not spending $5,000 a season on staff time out there, particularly because we've got a fairly new playground and we do mowing and garbage pickup. So
okay.
I think that it would be good for us to have a little bit more time out there also.
Thank you. All right, no further questions, comments? We'll go, yes. Was that, you're kind of halfway there, Jackie? I'm not sure.
Well, I have comments, but let's hear from the public first,
right,
and then I'll run through them.
Okay, let's go ahead and Ms. O'Connell, let's go ahead and open up for public comment.
Public comment is now open for item 12.4, approving the construction of a community garden on the south edge of Duffy Park. Jace Kaldinsky, go ahead.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can, thank you.
Perfect. So hi, my name is Jace Kaldinsky. I am the current president over at El Dorado High School's Key Club. And I just want to first off, thank you guys for considering our project. Our club in Kiwanis, like Terry touched on, does have a connection with Duffy Park through Kiwanis putting in their play structure. And then our club also actually put in the bike rack. So this is an amazing and super big project for our club that our members are really excited about. And we are hoping we are able to work with you guys to make this happen.
All right. Jace, oh, you disappeared. That's all right. We'll move on. We'll catch that up in a minute. Okay, yes.
Jen C, go ahead.
Hi there. Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of community gardens. I guess I do want to understand like the insurance liability issues because, I think there's potential there. And I just don't think that this neighborhood, tax pool should be covering that aspect. And I guess but most of all, because it's construed as being for the apartments, I just haven't really heard if the apartment residents have been involved at all in the whole concept development. I mean, do we know that, they're going to be participating? Are any of the high school students from the apartments? Those kinds of things. I mean, I really feel like developing it, if that is really the intended audience, especially, it's really important to involve them in kind of developing the whole plan and just knowing that they're involved. And then if it's really a broader community garden, then that's just a slightly different plan. And then you'd have a whole bunch of other questions. So if you could address those things, that would be great.
Thank you.
Caller 857.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening, Michael.
Hey, so I love the concept, but the most important thing about selecting a spot for a garden is selecting the spot. So just real quickly, it's all location, 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 sun and water and all of that. Looking really quickly at the location of this, it looks like it's on the north side of a hill, which is like one of the worst locations for growing a garden. Hopefully I'm wrong, but it looks like, so Duffy Park, I'm roughly familiar with it. The best location for a garden for vegetables and all that is right where the playground equipment is. So first off, you have to go, okay, concept is great. We want a community garden. Next is, where's the best plot of land that will actually produce? And then how do we secure it? The costs, you have your water, of course, but also you have to consider somebody, if you don't secure it, somebody putting their heart and soul, say you get a dozen people that are into this, they've got their plot, they bring their plants up through to maturity, they're ready to harvest, and all of a sudden the whole thing is vandalized or stripped of the produce. They're going to quickly lose interest. And next season, they're not going to come back. And the whole thing just falls apart. So location for best production of produce, security, who gets this? Is this just for the people in Cottonwood and the apartments? Or is it open to anyone in the community? A lot of questions to be answered before you actually nail it down. So just some food for thought.
Thank you, Michael.
Kathy Lishman, go ahead.
Good evening again. I think this is going to be a great experiment. Seems like it's the first one in the city. It seems to me that the city is going to be in charge of the irrigation, putting it in and repairing it if needed. Maybe the Key Club people can learn how to do that along the way also. I didn't know if it was going to be organic gardening or if they're allowed to use pesticides. And I gather that the city will be paying for the water. Is that correct? And I wonder how the people will be selected to have a garden there. They don't know yet how many, although now they know the site. So that could be figured out. And I was wondering also how often the Key Club members will be monitoring it. I know there are neighbors across the street who are really opposed to the park being there. I know the park has been very gentle on the neighborhood and it's a lovely park. And I just have a few questions. I think it's a great experiment and yay to the high school kids.
Kathy.
Mr. Mayor, you had a question for Jace.
No, I actually go ahead and bring Jace up. Oh, Jace disappeared.
I guess she disappeared. Sorry about that.
That's all right. We'll get her. Oh, there she is again.
Hi.
Hello, Jace. I just wanted to express my sincere appreciation. First of all, I was in Key Club in high school in El Dorado back in early mid 80s. So I spent some time in Key Club and doing some of these public programs and such, and really enjoyed it. It was a great part of my high school. So and congratulations to you. I hear you guys have a great program. So
Thank you. It's always cool to hear when other people and other adults moved on who have been in Key Club and can recollect those memories of helping their community through our organization.
Yeah. Jason, I just wanted you to hang in here for a minute if we had any questions for you that we could ask those of you. So and I'm gonna so hold tight there. I am going to bring it back to the council. And if we Mr. Connell, I know that we have, did she leave again? Dang. Yes. Yes.
You have one more hand, Britt.
Yes, I'm trying to get there. Thank you. So Ms. O'Connell, let's go ahead and handle that one more in public comment.
Sophie, go ahead.
Sophie, it looks like you need to unmute yourself. There you go. Nope, there you go.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and City Council. I am Steve Brown on the board of Kiwanis. I'm also the El Dorado High School advisor. And so we're just excited the measure for our club, and we're happy that you're considering this. I know there were some questions were asked. Jace can speak to those as well. But the kids have done a lot of work already. They contacted both the Cottonwood Senior Apartments and the Cottonwood Park Apartments, spoken with their managers, made sure there was interest from that community before we started. They've already looked at fundraisers. They've considered the issues there would be with vandalism, and they're looking at fencing, and I'm already starting to look at sponsorship to keep funding that. They've done a lot of work. They certainly are very appreciative of the challenges, but are excited that we can be, I think, the first community garden in the community. So we're excited and inspired with our young people, and I just like to thank you for considering their project proposal, and Jace is very competent and can answer any questions you might have. He's ready to work on this. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Sophie. All right. Jace, if you could hold tight there for a moment and don't hang up. We will, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment now and bring it back to the council for some discussion. If they have any questions for you, Jace, I'd like you to be available.
Perfect.
Yes, Councilmember Taylor, or Vice Mayor Taylor.
I have some comments and maybe a couple of questions. But first, I'd just like to say that reading this item made me really happy. This is, community at its best with high school kids doing this community service project to help seniors. And so I was just really happy to see this. I think I agree with the county that called in that, this will just be a great experiment to see how it goes. A couple of things that have come up that I am curious about is, one, I think that there should probably be some clause that there should be no cannabis grown in the garden.
Yes.
That could definitely increase vandalism, I think, and it's right next to a playground. And, in terms of how the park is funded through the tax district of Cottonwood, it seems to me like if the residents outside of the apartment buildings and the senior complex are also paying for this garden, then they should have access and the ability to get a spot for the Key Club through fundraising or user fees to maybe pitch in on the expenses for water and stuff like that. But that's my only comment really on that type of stuff. So I'm just excited. Thanks.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Borelli.
I know the question was asked, and I also am a little curious. Have you polled the folks that live in the senior citizens and then the other apartments that are there, and some of the neighboring folks to see, their interest and kind of, what did you derive after your if you approach these folks?
So yes, I have reached out to both the Cottonwood Park Apartments and the Cottonwood Senior Apartments and have gotten response from both of them that they think their tenants would love to be a part of this project. Actually, the Cottonwood Park Apartments, they had their receptionist at the front, along with maintenance, and some of the people who are living in the Cottonwood Park Apartments tried to put together a little garden plot on their land, but it wasn't kept up well with maintenance and their supervisor, so it flopped. But there is interest from both sides, And so we have been in contact. We did not contact the people who are living in the area because our thinking was the people who live in the surrounding area have land for the most part, whereas the people in an apartment complex, I mean, you can do it on a balcony, but if it's not really the same as having a plot of land where you can do it. So we were, our original plan was just opening it up to the current residents at the Cottonwood Park Apartments and the Cottonwood Senior Apartments. They would, if someone was interested in a bed, we would, of course, like put out flyers and notify all of the residents. They would then apply through El Dorado High School's Key Club. We would go through applications, and then we have not decided on an application process, but we will also be creating a little contract for them to sign, which we can now add no cannabis growing to. And so we still have to work all that out. First, we wanted to just get the land and have a concrete, here's where we can be. And so, yeah, and then in that we'll be keeping, in that contract, we'll be keeping your bed tidy, don't mess with other people's things. And I know you had brought up the vandalism point, which is like Terry was mentioning earlier. We, the El Dorado High School Key Club will be maintaining a garden bed outside of the gates of the garden for people who may be food insecure and need of produce. So instead of going in and breaking through a fence and stealing from someone's bed, they do have access to produce and can take from there. And I mean, it's just like you have the same amount of opportunity for vandalism in this gated thing as someone's gated backyard with a garden bed growing in it. My dad had a gated garden when he worked at Constantly Growing hydroponic store, and yes, he did have people break in until he actually at his store did grow some stuff outside of the fence for the homeless population so that they would have access to food and not take from what they were trying to grow.
Thank you. That it sounds like you guys have really, planned this thing out well. And I think that's a great idea that you're providing, on the outside too. I would have never thought to do that, but that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. And then with that also, with us maintaining a garden bed outside, we will be there regularly for upkeep and maintenance and little things. Our club will also be having two big garden cleanup days, one in the fall and one in the spring, with all of our club members and bringing in volunteers from the community, such as people who have garden beds there, Kiwanis, and other groups and organizations in the community.
That's great.
All right. Yes, Councilmember No.
Well, I wanted to first mention one of the concerns about the collars. I was out there at 2:30 today and it was in full sun. So I was pretty impressed at the sun exposure to that particular plot. It looked really well. I was wondering if Dave Warren had an idea about how much the water bill would be for that. I was kind of just researching gardens and issues that people have, and one of the #1 things were people dropping out if there's not a designated community manager. So I was wondering if the Key Club had, thought about that, having a manager who's going to follow up, and some of the things that I read, where people said, if they didn't plant within 30 days, then it would be given to someone on the waiting list. And just coming up with that, just like the city's going to have an MOU with the Key Club, that the Key Club would have the MOU, with or agreement with each of those plot people. Yeah, I agreed with the no cannabis. I'd like you to think about no pesticides. Regarding vandalism, one of the things I read were, you can plant certain things along the fence line that also deter people from wanting to climb the fence. So there's probably a lot of different solutions you can explore. And yeah, I was concerned if like maybe you'd first make it open to the Cottonwood Apartments, but if the plots aren't filled, that you would open it to other city residents. That was another thought I had, and I'm a little bit hesitant on the free. I kind of feel like, $20 for the year to help pay for the water, gives them a vested interest in showing up and doing what they say they're going to do. Yeah, those are all my thoughts.
Thank you. So our club went back and forth a few times on whether we want to charge or not. And the ultimate deciding factor was, for the most part, people who are living in an apartment complex can be money insecure, and we do not want any financial reasoning to stop someone from taking advantage of this garden and growing their own nutritious foods. But along that lines, it could be, it does cost $25 or whatever. And then if that is an issue, then they can reach out to us and go that way. And then, yes, like you had brought up that if you don't plant in 30 days, it'll be given to someone else. We will have similar things like that in the contract they will sign, along with keeping your bed clean and weeding and just keeping your area tidy. And then with the pesticides route, we had not discussed that. That's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I will definitely look into that, because that stuff can go from bed to bed, and we don't want that to be affecting other people's things. That'll be another thing in the contract, is you can't do anything in your bed that's going to affect someone else's bed negatively.
Great.
Yeah.
I did have one more thing that I just wanted to mention to Terry. I'd like to see the Park and Rec Commission take a review in 1 year of both the MOUs. I mean, it's a brand new thing. There could be things that you're not thinking of. And instead of having just a solid 5-year agreement, I'd like to see those, open to review in 1 year, just to be able to kind of smooth out anything that you maybe didn't anticipate.
I think that's a good addition, Councilmember. No. I definitely think that a 1-year review is warranted for something new like this, for sure. It'll be great if we can get it off the ground and actually have some planting for late summer or fall. We'll just have to see how it works.
Great.
I think it's important. I think that Jace and the Key Club have done a lot of research, and they have done their due diligence to put this together and work with the city. I don't want to get to a place where we're micromanaging it too much. I think that they really deserve to get this ball and run with it. I think there's a few suggestions that we could pass out along for them to consider. But I think this is their opportunity to do something and look at all the challenges and kind of work through the process as well. Yes, please.
Yeah, just a couple of things I want to mention. On the cannabis issue, our ordinance does not allow outdoor growing of cannabis. So that is in place already. We can enforce that. The other thing, there's a question come up about insurance. My comment on insurance is that we will work with our city attorney to identify within the MOU what appropriate insurance and home harmless agreements. I'm assuming that each user of that, as part of their agreement, we would require them to have a hold harmless agreement. So we can work through those issues. I don't see it as a major factor that we can deal with. So.
All right, thank you, Cleve. Any further? Yes.
I think Dave Warren was going to maybe answer my question about the water bill.
Yeah, he's come on a couple of times. Yes, Dave, we're here for you.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that Terry and I have had a preliminary conversation about the anticipated budget impacts of the garden. And at this time, we really don't have a cost figure for you because we don't actually know what the water consumption is. We did review the engineer's report for the LLMD district, and it is fairly silent. We had spoke about, there could be other shrubbery there, just regular landscaping that could be watered, and that the water that would be used for the garden wouldn't be any greater than the shrubbery in that area. So the overall impact, we believe, is de minimis, but we will include that in your operating budget and present that to you in this spring.
Thank you.
Thanks.
If no further comments, if we can get a motion.
I'll move the item.
A second.
All right, got a first and second, and any further discussion?
Well, just to clarify, did you want to add that 1 year review?
Yeah, I think you could add that in the motion for both the Rec and Park Commission and to come to the council with an update.
Okay, I'll make that my motion.
Well, does it need to come to the council for an update if everything's going great and just
I think just a report, it'd be great.
Or just
Yeah, I think that we can celebrate a success if we're having a success.
Love it. Okay.
Yeah, my suggestion was just for it to go back to the Park and Rec Commission.
Okay. So Patty went with the suggestion of bring it back to council. Do we have a second?
Oh, okay. Just a report. We're not going to bring it back to council. I think that's what
A report back to council.
or just a report back. Yeah.
Okay. And our second? Okay, we're going to second that as well. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Borelli,
Aye.
Councilmember No,
Aye.
Councilmember Zaragoza,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Thomas.
Aye. We have a unanimous vote this time. All right. It's a good one. Thank you very much, Jace, for joining us tonight and sharing your thoughts, and good luck in your endeavors. And with that, we'll move on to item 12.5, ratifying contract change orders 4, 5, 6, and 7 in the total aggregate amount of $45,000 with CE Cox. And I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Neves.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Good to see your faces. Just wanted to make one minor correction. I noticed that the beginning of the staff report says number 4. I apologize. That was a track change that needed to be deleted. We've actually already approved change order number 4, or council did anyway. So we're really only ratifying 5, 6, and 7. The resolution is correct where it states the 5, 6, and 7. So just wanted to make that clarification. Sorry about that. So the item before you this evening is really what I would consider an administration item towards contract closeout. We're wrapping up the Mosquito Road project that addressed the failing city utilities, including water, storm drain, and sewer. The project limits went from Highway 50 to the city limits over on Mosquito Road. And construction for this particular contract started at the beginning of 2020, and it concluded in December, and the paving construction contract started shortly thereafter, actually. So that we'll be bringing in that contract forward with the same kind of administrative proceedings in terms of ratifying change orders and closing out the project. And the actions before you this evening include ratifying change orders 5 through 7, as well as executing a notice of completion and releasing retentions held for construction security. This does not mean that we have not entered into a warranty phase. We are in a warranty phase with the project. And so we obviously track that really well, make sure we get our dollars worth. But each of the change orders are described in detail in the staff's report. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have or follow up with for those items. And should council approve this item, the NOC would then be recorded and the retention would be released within about 60 days. And that concludes my verbal report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Is there any questions for staff? All right. I do have one. Why did what was the requirement to put in the 2 additional fire hydrants that seem to be out in the middle of nowhere land?
Great question. So actually, they are located in their ultimate location. What will move is the trail. The trail will be realigned, and the curb and gutter along Mosquito Road from Highway 50 to Clay Street will actually be realigned and adjusted as part of the Placerville Station 2 project. You may recall about a month or 2 ago, council approved a contract for construction management services on that project. It is a federally funded project, so it takes a little bit more, not a little bit, a lot more effort paperwork wise to deliver. And so we're moving forward on that contract as well. We are reviewing the bid documents right now, and we'll be releasing it for bidding in about a month, hopefully less. We are going to be bringing an item before you at the next meeting, approving an AT&T utility agreement to get AT&T relocated off the poles that have been topped. Also, follow up about the question about the fire hydrant is that PG&E has relocated the new pole locations, and similar to the hydrants, those are the ultimate locations, and the trail will be moving. So rather than as part of the process as far as utility relocations go, you pay for temporary relocations as an agency. There is no shared cost of that. Whereas relocation into their permanent location is a shared cost in most instances, kind of depending upon liability, if they're located in easement or if they're located in right of way, et cetera. But as one way that we had, it was really not worth it to pay the extra, which would have been about $100,000 for relocation for a 4-month temporary condition. So we coned it off for safety, and we are pressing forward with the next part of it as fast as we can to get those ultimately in alignment with where they should be.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
All right, seeing no further questions at this time, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Public comment is now open for item 12.5. These are contract change orders with Cox Engineering for the Mosquito Road Stabilization, Clay Street to City Limits project. We'll go ahead with caller 857.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
So I want to give gigantic kudos to Rebecca and the city. The Mosquito Road paving project is awesome. Absolutely incredible. I do think that you could help pay for the project by parking a police car out there, because it's now a drag strip. So hopefully you can pull back a few dollars, and it is a residential area. For the pole and the fire hydrant that are kind of a tripping point over there at the parking ride, maybe you can throw up a sign that says construction area for the next year or whatever, some caution sign, because it's that is kind of a very concerning right on the trail, or just say the trail is now over here on the gravel parking lot. But otherwise, you guys really nailed it out of the park. You killed it. It's perfect. Mosquito Road is awesome. It is now a drag strip. Go make your money. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. All right. I am seeing no further public comment. We'll bring it back to the council for any further comments or action.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution items 1 through 3.
A second.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we could bring it to a vote, please.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No?
Aye.
Councilmember Zaragoza?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Mayor Thomas?
Aye. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Rebecca. Appreciate your efforts on this, And moving on to item number 12.6, approving an AB 2766 subvention fund program grant agreement with the El Dorado County Air Quality Management District in the maximum amount of $36,800 for the purchase of an unmarked 2021 Tesla Model 3 sedan. That sounds pretty fancy. So, with that, we'll go ahead and Cleve or Chief Wren?
I got it.
All right, Chief Wren.
Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening.
Yeah, the police department is really proactive in seeking out grant opportunities to help offset some of our expenses here at the police department. One of our capital outlay items that we constantly bring to the council during budget time is vehicle purchases. So when this grant came up last year by the El Dorado County AQMD, we took advantage of putting in for it, working with AQMD on what our parameters were and what we can get. We learned through the process that the grant was specifically for an electric vehicle. Not too many of those out there. Chevy made one, and Tesla, of course, has probably the better vehicle concerning EV vehicles out right now. We put in for the grant. The grant was 80% paid for by AQMD with a 20% match by the city. So the total price of the vehicle is $40,900 So we're asking for a budget appropriation of that amount. Once the vehicle's purchased, we submit the receipt to AQMD and they refund us less 20%. This vehicle would be utilized for administrative and support service staff. With that, I think I covered everything, but if you have any questions, I can try to get you there.
Do we have any questions for Chief Wren? Yes, Carol.
Do you know what the gas savings would be on a yearly basis?
I knew somebody was going to ask me that.
100%.
Yeah, we spend no gas money on it. I don't. I know our administrative and support service vehicles have a service life of about 15 years. So this 20% match will obviously pay, the vehicle will pay for itself as it progresses through its service life. So it'd be zero cost after so many years. And I can get that to you if you'd like it.
I was just curious.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know much about it. Commander Muser actually did a lot of the research and worked with AQMD on this project. And it was really interesting as we started to dig deep in it.
Councilmember Borelli.
I'm just kind of curious as to have other agencies used electric vehicles? And are they, how do you, I'm just wondering about the power and, and how long they run on a charge and
Sure.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's several agencies that utilize them. Fremont, I think, was one of the first agencies to really start to utilize them, which, I mean, Tesla was in Fremont. I don't know if they're still there or not, but that would make sense. But there's other agencies who have purchased EVs for law enforcement use. Some of them have used them as marked units, the black and whites with light bars on top, and others more of the administrative type vehicles. This is the lower end model Tesla. Don't let the name fool you. We're getting the very base that Tesla offers. As far as the power, it's got more. It has more power than our regular police vehicles, and the charge will last an entire shift before it needs to be recharged again.
One further question on the charging of it. Are you going to install a charging unit there, or?
We've talked about that as an option to talk to Rebecca to see if there's anything we can do, or talk to AQMD about that. In the meantime, we're just going to buy a very heavy duty extension cord and plug it into the wall.
So you can always go across the street and charge up too if you need to.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Michael.
Just a quick question, Chief. It's great. I think this is great. The only question is, I know you had I guess a Jeep Liberty before. I don't know. I mean, is there like a 4x4 need, or are we covering that with like? I think we got that other vehicle on the abatement cost or whatever, but just was wondering about the need for like 4x type of vehicle.
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. We look at that and we try to balance our vehicle purchases as we go to the council and ask for those capital outlays on how many four-wheel drive SUVs we have currently in the fleet based on how many sedans. If you remember, we came to you with Chargers to buy Dodge Chargers. Now we're coming to you again this next budget cycle for four-wheel drive vehicles. So we try to keep that balance because we do realize that there are occasions when we need to have that resource available.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and open this up for public comment.
Public comment is now open for item 12.6. This is regarding the approval of a subvention fund program grant agreement for the purchase of a 2021 Tesla Model 3 sedan.
All right, we'll give it just another second. Doesn't look like we have anybody for public comment. One more. 3, 2, 1. All right, we're going to close public comment and bring this back for Any more questions or action?
I'll move for adoption.
A second.
All right. No further discussion. All right, we'll go to a vote, please. Ms. Khan.
Councilmember Borelli,
Aye.
Councilmember No,
Aye.
Councilmember Zaragoza,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Thomas.
Aye. Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you. We
Yes.
appreciate the support, council. Thank you.
Can't wait to see it zipping around town. Following the speed limit, of course. Yes. All right, we're moving on to council reports from other agency meetings. And we'll start off with Transit Authority. I don't think they've met since our last meeting, and neither has Transportation Commission. Yes, nope, we've talked about that briefly already. We did meet with Transportation, just a side meeting, but we've already discussed that. LAFCO.
Our meeting's tomorrow, so we haven't met again since the last time we talked about it.
All right. Michael, what do you got from SACOG?
Yeah, SACOG, we did have a meeting. Big item was really Green Means Go again, in terms of we have a bill by Assemblyman McCarty that's carrying it, as well as sort of a budget request in for that, the 700 million that we're looking for the entire region. There's a large conversation about that and seeing that bill move. So that bill should be heard, I believe, early April. So for its first committee hearing. And I know, I think Cleve put a letter in support of that bill, which we've voted on, I think, earlier this year or last year, in terms of just the support of Green Means Go. So that was basically it. And then we had a large discussion on, we have a race, inclusion, and equity committee again for 2021, and there's sort of a large discussion about the parameters of that as well.
All right. Thank you. I'm actually going to just stick with you and have you report on the energy.
Pioneer, yeah. So it was our first meeting, and Mayor Thomas was also there as the attendee, and we got sworn in, I think, the same day or earlier in the day.
Yes.
Yeah, it was an interesting meeting. I mean, John Heidel, Board of Supervisors, is the county representative to Pioneer as well. I think Lori Parlin is the alternate on there. It was a good meeting. I mean, we're really getting our feet wet in terms of getting up to speed on what's going on. I think that the big discussion there was really on rates and, you know, where those are going to go, and what role we have as a board, as a CCA, to you know, work with the PUC so that there's some surety in those rates as you go forward. Those things tend to bounce around quite a bit on a very archaic method of how PUC puts those together. So we had a pretty healthy discussion, I think, about that, you know, moving forward. And Dennis, I don't know, I'm sure there was something else, but we had a really long conversation about that, though.
Yeah, I would say that did a good job. All right, thank you. And that is going to be an interesting program there, and see how that develops as we move through this year.
Agreed.
And then Placerville Fire Safe Council. Councilmember
Yes,
Brad.
unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend their meeting, but I did get the highlights from Chris. So I'll just real quickly, I tell you, this is really an active group. They are so dedicated, and they're just really working hard to make this work. So she was saying that they're collaborating with the Texas Hill Fire Safe Council on a combined grant from CAL FIRE to build projects that have been identified as important elements of the updated community wildfire protection plan. And then she also, on to the next item, they're going to participate in the Fire Protection District Strategic Planning Group started by Chief Cordero. They're drafting a template for neighborhood egress plans to help residents plan for emergencies and consider alternative routes and pack emergency supplies ahead of an event. She said they'll be working with individual neighborhoods to help them refine plans suitable for their location. This project is very important for neighborhoods that have locked gates. She said, we understand that it may prove very difficult or impossible to have some gates taken out, and in those cases, residents must be prepared to leave should such an order be issued. So, like I say, it was a jam-packed meeting, and they are working really hard, and they're, really wanting to be and cooperate and with the city of Placerville, and Pierre Rivas is heading up that. Pierre has welcomed the chance to meet with them and put it all together. And also, actually, Woody Deloria from the Transportation Commission, also, he's accepting some of the programs that have been done with the group, because part of that applying for the evacuation grant that the transportation has applied for. So they welcome the input from this Fire Safe Council.
That is great. Thank you, Patty. All right. Request for future agenda items. Does anybody have a request for a future agenda item? I do have one, and this is time permitting. I would like to I know that Pierre has it sitting on the shelf, probably ready to go or almost ready to go. And that's a discussion on the sidewalk signs that are on the streets. And is that a fair statement there, Pierre?
It's fairly fair. We would like to spend a little bit of time trying to put together an adequate slideshow for the council, where we take a lot of pictures of exactly what we currently have on the sidewalks to sort of facilitate a better discussion and maybe give some options for the council on different options that you would have regarding the regulation of these items.
What's a reasonable time frame if we were to consider this item? And I realize you have a lot of things going, so it's certainly within your time frame.
Yeah, I would say probably 2 months from now
Okay.
would be the earliest, because of the priorities that we're currently working on. We just don't have any extra time right now to devote on that. But
okay,
one of the main steps is trying to just put together the framework of how we're going to approach the item.
Okay. So if I would like a nod up or down to I got a 1 thumbs up, 2 thumbs up, 3. And yes, Patty, we got a 4. Okay. Got it. Okay. And if from my perspective of 2 months, if in 2 months you're not there, then you check in with Cleve and he can let us know, and we can go and figure out where we'll go from there. But I would at least like to get it on the list of things that we are seriously going to look at some point in the future here.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much, Pierre. All right. Okay, moving on, city manager and staff reports.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't think we have anything further in terms of staff reports tonight, so we're good.
Okay, thank you very much, Cleve. Upcoming agenda items that we are going to be tentatively scheduled for the next city council meeting. Drewberry Western Placerville Interchange Phase 2 construction management contract. Measure J reports, investment reports, formula business ordinance discussion potentially. Spring Street contract change orders, traffic speed on Broadway ordinance. Still working on that. REAP application, notice of completion of Upper Broadway consultation contracts. And we're on to item number 17. And that is to adjourn the meeting. And so we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 9:33. And our next scheduled meeting will be April 13th, 2021. And that will start at, looks like, I'm not going to trust these times on it because it starts at, so we're going to go, I'm going to say our closed session will start at 4:30 and our meeting will begin at 5. Does that sound correct?
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
there'll also be the April 7th.
Yes, oh, yes. And, but that's not a council meeting, and we'll have that April 7th meeting.
Right.
That's correct. That is not a council meeting. Is that correct, Steve?
That's correct.
Why did I call you Steve? That's weird. Okay, it's getting late. All right, and John, thank you for showing up before we go.
Welcome.
All right, everybody have a good evening.
Good night.
Night, everyone.